Yes.
Okay. Good evening, it's 6 o'clock, and welcome to the June 20th governing body meeting. If you will give your attention to Councilman Duncan, who will provide the invocation, stand as you are able, and remain standing for the pledge of allegiance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Hope it's been a good day for everybody. Bow your heads. Lord, we ask that you guide and direct our governing body and our actions. Grant that each of us may feel our responsibility to the city, our community, and all the people who look to us to make decisions that impact their lives. Help us to be alert and persistent when we make decisions. Let this meeting be effective and powerful. We pray we are ever mindful of opportunities, keeping in mind the enduring importance of our positions and the impact of the decisions we make. We must pledge our best efforts to help one another and make decisions in the best interests of our citizens and residents. Help us keep our eyes constantly open to the serious issues that city government can and should solve or improve, and help us to look at what we can accomplish by applying our considerable talents and experience to the problems that confront us. As we work together on behalf of all who live in this city, may we gain strength and sustenance from one another through reason and compassion. Amen.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order, and I ask the Madam Clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Padilla.
Here.
Councilmembers Hiller. Here. Valdivia Acala.
Here.
Ortiz.
Here.
Emerson.
Here.
Hale.
Here.
Nager.
Here.
Dobler.
Here.
Duncan.
Here.
And Hofer.
Here.
We have 10 present.
Roll call being read. I am going to go just a little bit out of order this evening before we get into appointments.
Mayor, I don't think your mic is on.
Mayor, mic check, please, mic check.
Mic check. Thank you, Sylvia.
That's perfect.
Okay. Good thing I have a loud voice, but the mic does help. I want to go out of order this evening. We've spoken before about acknowledging the good work of our staff and making sure that it takes a priority when we're talking about the things that we're trying to accomplish and how we serve our constituency, and looking at the people who work with the city of Topeka and seeing a little bit more than what we might see on a regular basis. You may or may not have seen a newscast that was on Channel 27 about our city attorney, Amanda Stanley. She was recognized significantly for her character, I think, more than anything. And because of that, they gave her an award that it does remind me a little bit of a margarita mug.
Hey, there you go.
But it's beautiful as she is, as a person. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody got a chance to know a little bit about Amanda. This is the Remarkable Woman Award. And if you go to KSNT News online, you can find a link to the video. We were hoping to be able to play that video tonight because it's an impressive video that speaks to her journey to where she is sitting with us this evening. So I would encourage you to do that. And again, I think it's an appropriate acknowledgement of the level of personnel that we have working for the city of Topeka. So I would like to, on behalf of all of us tonight, Amanda, congratulate you again, and I'm really glad that you're here as our city attorney. Yeah, that was You getting nervous?
You were getting, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. We will move on now to agenda item number 2, appointments.
A is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Travis Gooden to the City of Topeka Board of Electrical Appeals for a term ending July 6, 2025. B is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Jennifer Sork to the Washburn University Board of Regents for a term ending June 30, 2027. C is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Nick Irick to the Topeka Landmarks Commission for a term ending December 31, 2025. Items D and E are board appointments recommending the appointment of Greg Debacker and Brandon Fentress to the Board of Mechanical Examiners for a term ending June 20, 2025.
Thank you. You've heard the appointments. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Hofer, second by Deputy Mayor Dobler. If we'll call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yeah.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
and Dobler.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Okay, motion's been carried, and I see Jennifer is joining us via Zoom. And as I understand, Mr. Irick, Mr. DeBacker, and Mr. Fentress are in the audience this evening with us. If that's so, if I can ask you to stand so we can acknowledge your commitment and stepping forward to work with the city. Thank you very much. Are you standing, Jennifer?
I am.
Okay, good.
I appreciate the patience in allowing me to be at Kenberry to watch the ball game.
Okay. Thank you and congratulations. Okay, we'll move on now to agenda item number 3, presentations. Mr. Acting City Manager. Oh. That's you.
I was, all right, excuse me. So the first presentation is 2023 legislative update by our lobbyist.
Esteemed lobbyist.
Sorry,
Whitney?
I won't be asleep again.
So, it was the pinning ceremony, I got you. Whitney, thank you for being here tonight.
Very kind, Mayor.
Who's this?
I appreciate the opportunity to be here, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, governing body, and members of the staff. Our legislative session wrapped up Friday, April 28th. We're done, safe, so to speak, I guess, until January 8th, 2024, when the legislature comes back. All in all, we had a pretty good year with the legislative agenda items that we weighed into. Amanda Stanley was in the Capitol quite a bit this year, and very much enjoy working with her. She retains a lot of credibility and a lot of friends in the legislative process. Certainly, Councilman Duncan being there as well on behalf of the League of Kansas Municipalities, City of Topeka, is very helpful to us. Thought I'd highlight the issues that took our time where we were successful. Some things that we worked on that we got passed. Number one, the common consumption area that we had talked to the city about last year. That was something that we led the effort on in the legislative process. We were successful in getting that passed, working with alcoholic beverage control and other legislators who had some concerns. We got our bill passed relatively early in the House. We got it over to the Senate, and the way most liquor bills work, then a number of other bills get tacked onto it, which is fine as long as you get to the promised land, which we did. The bill was signed into law, and I think everyone was in pretty good spirits about the way the bill ended up, the proponents and the regulators and the legislators, and it passed by strong margin. The other issue that we introduced and worked through the process was changes to the driving while suspended. Current law till July 1 says you get a second and subsequent driving while suspended. It's a mandatory 5-day jail term. Even if you had a first offense 20 years ago and you got another one last week, 5 days, there's very little opportunity to avoid that jail term. There is no decay, so to speak. Doesn't make any difference how long ago that was. And it could be for something as simple as not paying a fine and having your driver's license suspended, not knowing about it, driving, and then getting caught. So actually, the prosecutor's office for the city of Topeka brought that to Amanda and to the city and said they had some instances where it would really appeared to be a miscarriage of justice and the penalty was greater than other crimes that seemed to be much more serious that didn't have a jail term. Well received in the House. We got it passed in the Senate. I can tell you it was more of a challenge than we had probably hoped it would have been in the Senate, but we were successful. A lot of people that had bills in that committee were not, so we were fortunate. And that was signed into law. I had a ceremonial signing ceremony with the governor and had a good turnout for that. So that was a good change we supported as well. Some other issues that we did bring support to, we didn't necessarily lead the charge, the expansion or the increase of the bonding authority for the Topeka Metropolitan Airport Authority. The mayor weighed in on that. 2436 had legislation for a Topeka license plate. We had kind of a start and stop on that a year or two ago, but this was something that the city could support this year. Our bill actually made it through the Senate. I think 39-1 went to the House and was taken away from us and used for other purposes, which turned into the legislative pay increase bill. So we found another opportunity to amend that issue into another bill. And that was signed into law, and I believe the plate will become available in 2025. There's kind of a cycle delay issue when they come out with new plates. And then 2092 regarding the membership of the Washburn University Board of Regents. We monitored that issue. It certainly affected the city of Topeka, but wasn't our issue to lead or to fight. A lot of times the legislative process, it's things that get introduced that may not be a good idea in the eyes of the city of Topeka and other municipalities, and we weighed in on those issues as well. Probably the biggest financial hit potential out there was the Senate position on repealing sales tax on food to apply that to cities and counties as well, local units of government. Would have really caused some conflicts, not just the money, but with community improvement districts, TIF districts, things like that, or star bond districts, excuse me, that depend upon sales tax revenue that really would need some technical cleanup if that were to go down the road, and obviously would have had a significant financial hit on the city of Topeka, Shawnee County. I think the number statewide was about $180 million. If that would have been signed into law, don't know that there's much of a chance of that happening with the governor we have. The Senate passed that legislation, the House rejected it, and ultimately the Senate gave up on that in a conference committee with their legislation that went to the governor on kind of a broad spectrum of taxes, which was vetoed, and there was a failure to override. So that didn't come into play. The property tax exemption for health clubs, restaurants, and child care facilities, that issue's been around now for a decade in some manner or another. Probably isn't going away, but that was put into a package of bills of about 8 or 10 other tax measures. Governor vetoed that. No opportunity to override because it was done right at the very end of the veto session. Legislation to prohibit vacant property registries, which City of Topeka has. We were able to modify that bill in the House to essentially allow a vacant property registry. You couldn't have a fee attached to it, but you could continue to enforce it, and then if people didn't comply, you could have penalties for that, so we would create an enforcement mechanism. Bill went over to the Senate. Senate chair didn't like the bill, went away, and so it never passed. It came out of committee, it went to the floor. During the floor debate, got really convoluted, and the chair ultimately made a motion, or another senator made a motion, sent it back to committee. Chair stood up and said, I agree with that, and it kind of just went away. So it'll be back, I have no doubt. Some other legislation, pretty significant, precluding planning and zoning in the 3-mile area was introduced. Had a hearing, allow non-residents to vote. So if you had someone outside the city limit who could vote on perhaps city council races, things like that. So no shortage of interesting ideas coming forth. We had hearings on that bill in the House as well. Did not advance. We saw some state preemption legislation, plastic bags, lawful products, things like that, that did not advance. And then partisan, nonpartisan local elections, and that did not advance either. So a number of those issues, we've seen them before. They're kind of like the greatest hits for the people who like those. We'll see them again in 2024, I have no doubt. Some other legislation that we did weigh in on, including homeless legislation, legal publications, online publications. We're getting there. I think there's going to be, eventually you're going to see publications that maybe go all online. Newspapers don't like that. No offense to those in the audience, but it's the way people get their news. And the newspapers are getting into that as well. Obviously, they're putting public notices online as well. So there is a way to for them to work with that, but there just hadn't been an agreement on what that looks like yet. And then asset forfeiture, that issue is likely to be back again next year. Continues to be controversial, and usually extreme cases make for bad law, but that's what we see in the legislative process when people have some instances of forfeiture where maybe it was not appropriate but occurred nonetheless. Other matters that we were monitoring based upon the legislative agenda was KDHE and docking. Docking is coming down brick by brick, piece by piece on a daily basis, and then about a block and a half to the south of that, the KDHE lab is going up, steel beam by steel beam, and they're making progress down there as well. Our agenda was to do something with the docking property, and if it was going to be torn down, that something would be rebuilt, and then obviously the KDHE lab, that our interest, we're seeing that constructed in the downtown area of Topeka as opposed to another city, number one, or number two, not in the downtown area. Also, something you've seen in some of my reports before, it talks about the track record of the legislature versus the governor. This was a record year for the number of bills vetoed by the governor this year, about 17, 18 of them in total. Legislature and the governor batted about 500 each. They overrode about half of them, and half of them they didn't. I suspect those not overridden will show up again next year. You will see, I'm sure, and we're seeing it already, litigation over some of those that did pass that were overridden. You're seeing, for example, the Kansas Child Mutilation Prevention Act that would prohibit surgeries on minors for transgender kinds of issues. That's being challenged. I saw, before I came over here tonight, I think Arkansas had an Arkansas federal judge who ruled that law unconstitutional. There's about 10 states that have a similar bill. We have the Fairness in Women's Sports Act that was overridden earlier in the session. That's under challenge in other states. And a number of those kinds of issues will probably have to be sorted out in the federal court before we get any kind of definitive answer whether they are constitutional or not. The legislature approved interim committees for the summer and fall. Here about a week and a half ago, those committees will probably start in the next 2-3 weeks. We're going to see some issues on elections, some on taxes, quite a bit on energy, renewables, energy, electric rates, and so forth. Nothing specific to local government. There's not a local government interim, so to speak. And then even the tax issues, it's kind of vague to exactly what they're going to be reviewing, but when the tax committee comes to town, they get all kinds of interesting ideas regardless of what they say they're going to talk about. So that'll be something we pay attention to as well. It's my report. I'm happy to stand for questions. Mayor, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Whitney. Any questions? I want to thank you, Councilwoman Hiller.
A lot of people have had questions about what the rollout is for common consumption. What the next steps are with cities for that.
I can take that for you. Amanda Stanley, City Attorney. So the next step is we need to pass an ordinance. On the city side, we've been talking to business owners downtown, NOTO, citizens, figuring out what they want. The next step will be to take it to policy and finance so you guys can sort out what you want, what you don't want, and pass an ordinance.
Thank you. And thanks to both of you and Whitney for running the agenda this year. the common consumption. It wasn't called that 12 years ago when we started, but
It's
pretty
evolved over
amazing
the
to
years. Yeah.
see that
Come a
happen
long
finally.
ways.
Thank you, Mayor.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Whitney, thanks for everything you do. You've been at this for a while. You're really good. You're low key. Get a lot accomplished. Very good at updating the council on a regular basis. And this was an interesting year. And I think between you and Amanda and Councilman Duncan and others, we came out really well. So appreciate your work. Thank you.
I reiterate what they've said, and I'll take note that I don't know if you meant it or not. As a pun, when you were talking about this, you said everybody came out in good spirits. Okay, all right. I just want to know, you worked that in there, but thank you very much for all your work, Whitney.
Thank you. I enjoy it very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Whitney. Appreciate what you do for us. Your next presenter is Steve Bauman, Shawnee County Appraiser.
You know, I was going to make the same comment, but I was wondering if you were going to present Amanda with the margarita mug or not.
It's empty right now.
Oh, okay. That's what we're waiting on? Okay. I know my time is short, so I'll try and get through this basic information as quickly as I can. Feel free to cut me off if you need to. I am Steve Bauman. I'm your county appraiser. I feel like I'm very approachable, so if there's any questions or concerns or you need information after this, feel free to reach out to me. Let me see if I can work this mouse appropriately. Yeah, there we go. The appraiser's office was created and directed almost entirely by statute. Almost every aspect of our job is driven by statute, and it's overseen by our oversight agency, the Property Valuation Division of the Department of Revenue. All these statutes here are important, but in the interest of time, I'm going to be skipping through a lot of this, but 79501 states that all property must be appraised at fair market value, with exceptions for agricultural. And then 79503A provides that definition of fair market value. The Property Valuation Division reviews most all of our processes and the results measured through procedural and statistical compliance. Part of that is the sales ratio study that's used, that uses property that have sold after our valuation date to check to see that our appraisals are accurate, or measures whether or not they're accurate. So in this ratio study, a median ratio below 100 would indicate our appraised values are generally lower than the sale prices that are coming in. Over 100 would indicate that appraised values are over the sale prices. So the compliance standards require the median be between 90 and 110. This latest ratio study included 91.3 residential median ratio and 92.6 median ratio for commercial. Those are a little bit low, still in the acceptable range, but it's an indication that our appraised values are generally lower than what the property is actually selling for. Year over year, our office has maintained near perfect compliance scores. And we employ what's called mass appraisal technique, which is valuing a universe of properties as of a specified date using standardized procedures with statistical testing. So everything that we do is tested by statistics. The data that we have is then used to test what it is we're doing, and things that occur after our valuation date used to further. It's like the sales ratio study. We build appraisal models to assist in the valuation of every property, but each property is appraised based on its own unique individual characteristics. We're required to visually inspect every property at least once every 6 years, but we're out there more often for things like building permits, if a property transfers ownership, or if the owner requests us. We review and analyze every sale transaction that occurs in Shawnee County. This includes an on-site inspection of every market arm's length sale. So, and while we measure and inspect every home, we don't get to go inside every house. I don't think I've been inside any of yours, but therefore we have to assume that the interior is similar in condition and quality to the exterior unless we find out differently. Most of the time, this is usually the case. Models are developed for each market area using sales data, cost and depreciation figures, income and expense information to reflect what's actually occurring in the market. Using property characteristics in this process allows for extraction of factors that allow for adjustments between subject properties and the comparables, so we can fine-tune those values. Highlighting again the importance of sales transactions, because they are used in all three approaches to value: the cost approach, the income approach, and the sales comparison approach, as well as trend analysis and statistical testing. So we're responsible for appraising over 76,000 parcels of real estate annually with an effective date of January 1st. The appraised value that we look to obtain is what that market value and what a property should be able to sell for in an open and competitive market, assuming willing buyer, willing seller, without any undue compulsion. I think some people believe that we raise values to increase tax revenue. And that's not the case. Our office was established to try and assure fair distribution of the total tax base. And this last couple of years, our market has been pretty intense. After sending out our value notices for 2023, we've been fielding a lot of phone calls. Our commissioners have been fielding a lot of phone calls. And I'm sure you all have been fielding a lot of phone calls. So I'd like to go over some of the indicators that we're seeing in our market. Average and median sale prices have been increasing at higher rates than the previous normal years. And this is due in part to near record low inventory of homes available for sale. We finished the year with less than a month's supply. Typical supply is considered 4 to 6 months in a balanced market. You can see from this chart that we've been low for several years. Mortgage rates have been historically low in the prior years, feeding this buying frenzy. I believe this latest increase in rates slowed market appreciation from what it could have been. So it may have been helpful in the long run. But if you look at the mortgage rates over a 50-year history, 6.5% interest doesn't really seem that extreme. So maybe somewhat of a back to normal. Some additional charts show the total number of sales per year. This last year was lower than the prior, but kind of in line with the 5-year history of total sales. In addition, new home permits are not increasing, which contributes to supply issues. And then this map doesn't really show up very well on your screens, but it's an indication of the general residential trends that we're seeing throughout Shawnee County. Between 5 to 17% increases depending upon locations, and these are general increases. So depending upon available information for each home, every home may be something greater than or less than this percentage.
Can you go back to the slide real quick?
I sure can't. Well, I think I can.
I'm just trying to figure out the percentages there, the 7% through 15%. All right, let me get my mic on. The 7% through the 15%. Is that the increase in property tax or property value that they received?
It's the general trend for those locations. So most of the property in those areas saw that increase. But there again, some property may have had different information or different conclusions that would cause us not to use that exact percentage. Maybe something a little more, something less. Interior conditions, remodel jobs, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
And then this is the history of appraised values for the city of Topeka. Currently, the total appraised value is $11.4 billion, indicating a 12.2% increase from the prior year overall. Within that, this is Shawnee County overall, but commercial values increased 7.4%. Residential market increased 13.8%. That includes apartments in the residential classification. So with talks of pending recession and market fears, I surveyed our surrounding counties just before we were getting ready to finalize our values to see what their analysis were saying. I was kind of afraid to have us jump off a cliff on our own. But the results were fairly uniform throughout our region. Some of these, like us, we have a range, 7 to 15%, because we have a lot of different market areas within our county. There are other counties that are either too small to provide a lot of information for the different ranges, or they just reported one range to me. So looking at the total city of Topeka appraised value, residential classification makes up 60.7% of the total appraised value, commercial 17.5%, and exempt classification is 16.4%. A more important number is the assessed value that reflects only the taxable property in the city. And it's an increase of 10.7% over the prior year. Residential didn't change that much, making up 60.9%. But commercial picks up that exempt portion that's not taxable, and it comes in at 38.2%. Commercial has a 25% assessment rate. Residential property has an 11.5% assessment rate. So there is an appeal process for those property owners that feel we have incorrectly appraised their value. They can appeal within 30 days of our valuation notice. Our valuation notice was mailed March 1st, so that time frame has passed. But they can still protest their taxes, either the first half or the second half, if they didn't appeal at the first level. And we do try to make this process as painless and easy as possible. So if you're getting any phone calls still, feel free to transfer them to us, and we will assist them and guide them through the process of getting their value appealed. This is an informal hearing count for quite a ways back, 2008. Generally, we have about 1 to 2% of the properties appeal their value every year. With the big spike in values last year and this year, they've gone up significantly. So we're probably 2 to 3% now. The 2023 appealed numbers aren't on this chart, but I believe it was 2,300 instead of the 1,900. And then that orange line is the percentage of changes that we make. So it's not a steel trap. You're not, just rubber stamp. We take a look at the information that's provided and make adjustments where necessary. Most of the time, it's because, like I said earlier, when we have to assume that the interior condition and quality is similar to the exterior, sometimes that's not accurate. And this appeal process is a good way to make sure that we get those results correct. going to veer out of my lane a little bit because the appraiser's office doesn't do taxes. But trying to answer some of the questions that I get. And I like to point this out. Property tax is the only tax that doesn't come with an automatic increase. It's dependent on the budgets of all the different taxing authorities and what they need to operate. And then in this mill levy example, the budget is the tax. The mill levy is calculated by dividing the budget by the assessed value. After the budgets are set, total tax is set, the calculated mill levy is then used to multiply by each property's assessed value to get to the individual tax amount. And then in this example of a no increase, no tax increase, even though the assessed value increased 10%. You can see it's really not a tax increase since the total budget amount is the same as last year. The mill levy will calculate itself to a decrease based on that prior calculation. Now, with the cost of everything increasing, it's unrealistic to expect budgets to remain unchanged. I completely understand that. So, I mean, they're probably going to need to increase as well. But this example just shows how the budget drives the mill levy, not the mill levy determining what the budget is. This timeline shows the important phases. I'll just mention that the tax paid in December is based on the appraised value as of January 1st, and the budget's set in September, and that the taxes paid in December of 2023 will actually be for the 2024 tax year. So, people paying, like if we had a big market change from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, say the market fell flat and dropped out the bottom, that wouldn't be recognized until the January 1st of 2024 value, but it's something that we would recognize. So if values decline, we will recognize it because we're required to. And then this is just some of the property tax relief programs that are out there. I know I filled a lot of phone calls from elderly, low-income, disabled veterans, and sometimes it's pretty heartbreaking, but there is some assistance out there. This homestead property tax, do I have enough time to cover this? Homestead property tax refund up to $700. Eligibility is pretty simple. Household income less than $37,750, 55 years old or older, or disabled. The safer property tax refund is 75% property taxes paid, and that goes to low-income seniors. It's pretty difficult to get to 65 years or older with a $22,000 income limit. New for 2022, I think they were addressing some of the concerns with these value spikes. Seniors and disabled veterans, household income less than $50,000, 65 years old or disabled veteran, base year appraised value of $350,000 or less. They get a refund in income taxes, a refund of increase in income, they get a refund of the increased tax amount from the 2021 base year. So it kind of helps them through this increased tax process. And this is administered by the state of Kansas. The Taxpayer Assistance Center number's there. Shawnee County Clerk helps people fill out their applications and get those submitted. So it's a useful option for some people. And then this is simply just an abstract of appraised and assessed values for all the different classifications for the city of Topeka that I thought I'd share. We have this information available for you all if you want it, and we can break it down into the different taxing units or the different tax unit groups or county overall. And finally, most of our property information is available on our website. And that includes the tax history, so taxes every year, as well as each jurisdiction's share of the tax dollars for that specific property. And our website's snco.us/AP, and that'll get you to where you can start searching for the information. And I'd be happy to stand for questions if we're not out of time. Are we out of time?
No, you're good.
All right.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Steve, I appreciate, I think it was a couple of years ago, I got on the website trying to find information on the different jurisdictions, and I couldn't find it. And
It wasn't there.
I made a phone call, and like a week later, the really nice pie chart with all the jurisdictions, so really some of the best laid out information I've seen on any appraiser's website. I know Johnson County and others have done it, but you guys do it really well, so appreciate the response and appreciate having the information.
It was
Thank you, Mayor.
it was a great suggestion.
Councilman Kell?
I think I'm hung up a little bit on the 2023 residential trend indications. And a lot of my district, and I believe it is some of Councilwoman Ortiz's district, that 14%, and that's, I just don't see where that's,
Where that holds true? You mean?
I
it's
see, if anything, the houses are going down in value and deteriorating and things like that in those neighborhoods, rather than being built back up, being, new properties being put in place for a torn down property. It just seems like we have a lot of rentals, and a lot of landlords aren't taking care of those rentals, and those houses are falling in on themselves. So it seems like our lowest income neighborhoods are getting nailed the hardest there in that area.
I'd be happy to try and share some of that information with you. I hear what you're saying, but I think a lot of the flipper shows that are on TV are help driving some of the interest in the lower properties. Partly that, and then the middle price range properties all went up also, and so it's pulling everything up along with it. And so the only thing that we are able to do is follow the data that leads us to these value increases. The sales in those locations are showing it, and that's what we have to rely on. But I'd be happy to try and provide you some additional information on your areas.
And then I'm not sure how much you'd be able to answer on this, because I know it is kind of an appraisal issue. It's Heartland Park right now. Is there any progress with that? Are they still, in essence, running business as usual right now, or are they going to, is this going to have any impact on the city long term with what's going on with Heartland Park?
Steve, I don't know if you're in a position to speak to that.
Yeah,
During this presentation. If there's some information that the councilman might want to follow up with you offline, I would appreciate that you take it up at that time.
I would prefer that.
Okay, I just know a lot of
There's
people.
not a lot I can say anyway at this point because of pending litigations, pending lawsuits. But there's no open appeals currently about the value. And, I can try and, or maybe contact our counselor's office.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Duncan.
Thank you for being here. You're mostly here because I asked for you to be here, so both thank you and I'm sorry. But, I meant it the night I said it. I realize this is my 4th year on the council, and we got those emails too. But also as we go into our budget and talk about mill levies, and it occurred to me that in 4 years, we hadn't heard from you. And that's not your fault. That's ours for not saying, hey, maybe we should check in every few years and just get this kind of update to show what the trends are and how things have gone and what goes into your decision. So thank you for that. I do have just a couple questions, and these really are clarification. Some questions I get from folks and ones I honestly don't understand, but they're in no particular order. The first one is, and this is a double-edged sword because it can bump you, but do we have to do these every year under state statute?
State statute annually.
Okay.
There's been some legislative talk about kicking it to a biannual every 2 years, for which I'm in favor. It'll give us more time to do an accurate job, but it'll also compound sticker shock.
Right. Yeah, that's that double edge.
Right.
So I do have a question about the comps that are used. and I'm going to give you a couple examples, not for you to comment on, but so you understand why I'm kind of trying to get the question. So, for instance, one of the ones that I saw had, this one's probably the most basic, had 4 houses and like, let's say they were all around 220, 225. And then there was the one that was like 270. And I think because it probably had like a swimming pool or something, right? But so it sold for more. There was one example where we had a house near Potwin, but clearly not in Potwin, but Potwin homes were part of that comp, which made a significant difference, at least in some of the numbers because of that distinction. So even though I think we all know that even though some of those houses may be the same size, they clearly are not the same, right? And then an example of there's a development off of Burlingame Road that's 99, Pepper Tree that's 99 homes, and some of their comps were homes that had full yards that were outside of that development. And so I think my question then is, I think some people see that and say, wait a minute, if this is a comp being used, it doesn't seem comparable. So my bigger question is, how do comps work? Do you have more control over those versus what the state says you have to use? And explain the comp process, I guess.
Well, the state gives us the process. They don't control what it is we do. They do review everything we do to make sure it makes sense and it's accurate. But with comparable properties, it is difficult. In an area of all homogeneous properties, it's easy, and we do have a system that does work with us. We set the weights and the parameters for how it pulls comparable properties in. There are going to be some homes that don't have enough properties in its general location to create a full comparable sheet. So we are going to pull from outside. Potwin example, we do have an adjustment for that locational difference. So that's going to come into play. Same with the pool. We can adjust for that pool difference. Not sure if I answered your question or not.
No, I mean, I think those are people look at, and so, I mean, my advice to those folks at that point is contact you, because you can either say, here's what happened, and I know it's tough for you to say whether people should or shouldn't appeal, but sometimes you can say, well, that one we may need to correct. I don't know what that process is, but those are ones I said, well, call them. They usually will work with you and explain.
Well, I'll tell everybody, if they feel that they can't sell their house for that amount, they need to contact us to appeal. I mean, because that's really what we're shooting for. Our goal is to appraise it at what it should be able to sell for. And, the system will pull comparables for us to assist us in that process. But at any time, if property owner says, no, I want you to use these properties because they're more comparable to mine than what you're using, we can bring those into the system too, as long as they're valid sales, because we don't want to use sales that aren't true and correct. And the key is we have to use sales. We can't just compare it to the neighbor that doesn't have a sale on it. But we look for those comparables, best comparables we can find. And there are just going to be some houses that don't have a lot of great comps. And so we have to look at the other indicators too. Good
My last question is totally crystal ball, so it's totally unfair, and I know that asking it. And I guess it's just, I think why a lot of folks have seen, whatever we want to call it, sticker shock, or even your chart showed, we went on an average of 3 to 4% to 2 years of 12, 13, whatever that was. The market went crazy on us for whatever reason, right? Banks decided, perfect storm. The banks got loose all of a sudden because the interest rates were way down. We had people doing crazy things like saying, I'll give you $40,000 extra right now without an inspection. And for some reason, banks said, sure, we'll finance that. And how that's going to shake out. But I think now we're seeing, obviously, rates are back up. Banks getting a little tighter. People aren't throwing around that money. So on the one sense, there's a hope that levels out. I guess the question is, you've been doing this long, is there ever a time where it levels back to before the market went crazy? And I mean, values don't always necessarily, I mean, I know everybody wants their house to be worth a lot when they sell it. It's when they have to pay the taxes between when they buy it and sell it they don't want. And I understand that, but
I'm not wishing for a market decline at all, because I think that hurts people. But I would really appreciate a very calm, normal 3 to 4% increase market that it doesn't cause us a lot of stress. Same with the value decline. That creates even less stress for our office. So it's something that if we see it, we'll reflect it. 2008 crash, a lot of the big cities and coastal communities that we're seeing double-digit increases on an annual basis. You know, we were at 4%, so we were steady and strong. When the market crashed, it took a little while for that crash to get here, but I think in maybe 2010, our values dropped a little bit, 1 to 2% overall. But that was the last time. Ever since then, it's been steady again until this latest frenzy.
Thank you.
Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thanks for being here. And hey, listen, before I ask you this question, you have a tough job, and I appreciate you coming here and and standing for it. My question has to do, and I remember during the recession, I think I bought a property, and the what I got taxed for just a year later was like twice what I paid for it. And the argument for your office was it was a distressed sale. Well, it seems to me like in the last few years with so few properties on the line, you didn't really have a true market. So maybe they're almost distressed buys, which I think was kind of what Councilman Duncan was alluding to. But it seems like that never factors, right? It's always if the market's going up, and I guess my sense is that when it goes down, there's a drag on lowering them too much, but when it goes up, sometimes it's 100% of that.
That's fair critique. Yeah. It's easier to drop them than it is raise them. So, but besides that, to answer your question about the distress sales, we do have distressed buys now. Okay. And those we eliminate from our analysis also. The ones where they're going way over, they don't appraise out, property owners kicking in $60,000 in cash. We don't use those to help appraise other properties because they are outliers. Back then, happened to be here then also, but not in this position. But those distress sales, we were keeping a pretty close eye on, because if those became the market norm, then we would be using them. But they were still the outliers, kind of like the really big ones here in the buying season.
Thank you. If I could just one more, Mayor. Sure. Switching gears entirely, I couldn't find it. I was looking for it on CJ Online, but I thought there was an article a couple weeks ago. There was like the most expensive vacant properties, but then there was also a thing like the most valuable properties. And I will tell you something that always just really hurts is when I see that 8 of the top 10 most valuable properties in Topeka or Shawnee County are tax exempt. And I guess my question first of all is, that was didn't mean for it to be that big of a, want to go to break, Mayor, or?
We have the firemen here.
Okay.
Get 911. Let's go to an intermission. Thank you, Steve. Just hold on. Okay, we'll resume where we left off. We had to take a quick intermission. We have the Shawnee County Appraiser here answering questions during the presentation. Do we have further questions, Councilman?
Yeah, Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, if I could just finish my question. It talked, a lot of the properties are, well, unfortunately, in being a capital city, a lot of our properties, large properties, are tax exempt. One, I guess, why do you assess, or why do you spend the time and the money to value exempt properties?
Well, it's a state requirement. I mean, it's part of the Kansas statutes. We are required to appraise all property in the state, whether it's exempt or not. So that's part of that process that we're required to follow through on.
Okay, thank you. And just as a follow-up on that, is there a way, and I've tried before on you have some great tools to search your website graphically, but one thing I can't get is like the tax tax status of the property like, if it's exempt or not? Is there a way to, you know, that, because one of the things sitting here in this chair, again, if you look, I mean, there's a huge hospital on 10th Street that most people don't realize doesn't pay any property taxes. And, you know, if, for instance, if just that one property was paid, I think the mill levy could go down by 3 mills across the board overnight.
Right.
So we are continually trying to fund our operations on the backs of a lot of citizens, really. A lot of, I mean, you mentioned, I think you say 60-some% is individual homes.
Yeah, 60% residential classification. That includes.
So I would love to be able to get the data on what are the exempt properties around town and however they looked at. So are they still tax exempt? When do they come back on? And
Well, yeah, so to answer that question, you know, like the hospital, it's not-for-profit exempt as a not-for-profit hospital.
Right.
It's going to remain exempt until legislation changes or until they stop doing business as a hospital, as a not-for-profit hospital. You know, same with churches and things like that. It's a matter of it's exempt until it ceases that exempt purpose. I don't believe there's a way to search by classification, but I could absolutely provide you a list of all of the property that we have exempt.
okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. First, Steve, I can vouch for how accommodating you are for frequent visits, you and your staff. It's
Great.
been a few years now, but you know, I think all of us go through some cycles where something happens and we have lots of questions from people in our neighborhoods, and appreciate your work.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I do have a question for you as well, and that one of the things that we're challenged with is vacant structures in town. And I remember being quite surprised a couple of years ago to discover that there was a significant vacant property in one of my neighborhoods that had been zeroed out as far as the value of the structure. Can you talk for a moment about when and why that happens?
Yeah, I think I remember which property you're talking about. But in some cases, you know, we have to appraise the property at what it would sell for. That's our goal. So if a property becomes in such condition or has a issue with it that would cost more to fix it than what the property's worth, that property then becomes worthless because no one's going to buy it knowing that this issue is there. So that's primarily the reason why we'd have a property at zero value, other than, you know, this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but some income producing properties have satellite parcels and we value them on the income approach. So that income really considers those other satellite parking lots and things like that. So those may be zero valued as well.
I'm hoping we could have a conversation about that. Most of our properties that have been vacant even for a long time aren't demolition material, they just need an investment. One of the things that helps us get them moved down the line is because the people don't want to pay the taxes on them. And when the taxes get zeroed out, then there's no reason to turn it over. And that is one of the things we're challenged with here and that we're going to be talking about this summer. So
Yeah, that's a good point, and maybe that's where the vacant property registration comes into play. But
well, they still have, you know, there's no incentive in a way, because if they're, you all still charge on the land on those properties and also the water runoff. So there's something, but it can be a substantial reduction, which then takes the pressure off for them to turn it over.
Councilwoman Hofer, did you have a question? She's asked it, okay.
did I answer it? Okay.
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor.
Further questions for Steve? Again, thank you for coming down here. So, yeah, and it's been a friendly crowd for the most part.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as I
It wasn't
imagined.
as bad as you thought it was going to be.
You know, I have to do this for our commissioners every year. I guess I don't know that I have to, but I do. I wouldn't be against doing it for you when we get ready to send out value notices, so feel you'd like to extend the invitation again, I'll probably show up again.
Thank you.
Covering my bases.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
City Manager.
So, Mayor and governing body, your next presentation is the City of Topeka 2023 Financial Report, and that will be by Rochelle Matthews, your Administrative and Financial Services Director, and Stacy Hammond, CPA with BT and Company.
Michelle?
Good evening, Mayor and governing body. Tonight for you, we have the 2022 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. For time's sake, we're going to call it the ACFR from here on out. This is a robust financial document that represents our financial position at the end of 2022. This represents the work of close to 20 accountants across 6 months to complete this document for you. In addition to presenting to you all, as a statement of our condition, we also turn this document into the Government Finance Officers Association to be graded. And I'm pleased to report that last year we received this certificate of outstanding achievement for our financial reporting. Not only that one, we also received the Budget Award and the Popular Annual Financial Award. So we are a Triple Crown winner for 2021, and we have high hopes for 2022. At this time, I'd like to, with your discretion, thank my staff. Tonight in attendance, I have Katrina Frost from the Housing Department. I have several that also couldn't attend: Kristen Reddy, Amanda Meyer, Crystal Williams. I'd also like to thank Director Friedman and Director Davis, as their accountants are integral parts of this process. So with that, I will turn it over to Stacy Hammond with BT & Co., who will give you the full rundown on the financial report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. Good evening, everyone. I'm Stacy Hammond, a partner with BT & Co. PA, and I'm pleased to be here tonight to present the results of the city's annual financial statement audit. There are 3 things that we're required to visit with you about tonight, and those are our responsibilities in performing the audit, a discussion of the city's significant accounting policies and practices, and to discuss our observations about the overall audit process. The first thing I need to visit with you about is our responsibilities in performing the audit. Our responsibility is to perform the city's audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States, the provisions of the Single Audit Act, uniform guidance, OMB's compliance supplement, and the requirements set forth in the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide. All of those standards require us to perform procedures in order to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the city's financial statements are free from material misstatement. As far as the procedures that we performed, we did examine the evidence supporting the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements. We also reviewed the accounting principles used by the city and the significant estimates made by management, as well as evaluating the overall financial statement presentation. The most important thing that I'll be telling you this evening is that as a result of performing those procedures, we did determine that the financial statements of the city are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Therefore, we issued what we call an unmodified audit opinion, which is the best kind of opinion on the financial statements that the city can receive. We also performed a single audit of the city's federal expenditures. In other words, its compliance with requirements identified as subject to audit in the OMB compliance supplement that could have a direct and material effect on each of the city's major federal programs for the year ended December 31, 2022. As a result of the procedures that we performed, we did determine that the city complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements that could have a direct and material effect on each of its major federal programs. Moving on to the second item that we need to discuss tonight, which is the city's accounting policies and practices. Here, we would be required to bring to your attention anything that we identified during our audit related to changes in existing accounting policies, newly adopted accounting policies, or information about significant accounting estimates. The city did implement a new accounting standard this year. It was titled Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement Number 87, Leases. This statement required the city to recognize certain lease assets and liabilities for leases that had previously been classified as operating leases. Regarding significant accounting estimates, the city does have several of those, which are your other post-employment benefit liability, the net pension liability resulting from the city's participation in CAPERS, self-insurance reserves, the valuation of investments at fair value, and lease assets, obligations, receivables, and deferred inflows. Our job as auditors is to make sure that management of the city has a reasonable process in place to measure and record those significant accounting estimates. We did determine for each of the estimates that I just listed that the city does have a reasonable process in place to measure and record those estimates. The final item that I need to bring to your attention tonight is our observations about the audit process. This would be where we would inform the city council if we'd had any disagreements with management or any significant difficulties or consultations. I'm pleased to report that there's nothing in any of those areas that we need to report. The city was very well prepared for our audit, and management of the city was extremely cooperative throughout the entire audit process, as well as transparent in answering the numerous questions that we asked during the audit. Before I turn it over for questions, I would like to give a special thanks to Rochelle and everyone in her department. Rochelle was the audit project team leader on the city side of things this year. This was our firm's initial year in performing the city's financial statement audit, and it did cause the city to have to spend a number of additional hours working through initial audit planning documentation with us, and we greatly appreciate the city's organized approach in getting through that. So thanks to everyone in the finance department of the city. And with that, I would open it up to any questions that any of you might have.
Any questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for being here. Do you do other governmental entities, the same function for other governmental entities?
Yes, BT & Co., one of our niche areas of specialization is audits of state and local governmental entities.
You may not be able to answer this, but I'll ask the question. What do you normally see as percent of reserve for general fund?
That I would probably prefer not to answer that question. We see all manner of things, across the board that, what I would say is that, what each city should do is, management and the governing body of each city, should set an amount that they would like to see as a goal and then look at the end of the year to see if you've achieved that.
Are you a good dancer? Thank you very much.
Not particularly.
I think she is with those moves she just showed us, yeah. Any further questions? Thank you for the report. It was clear, and I appreciate your work. And thank you for acknowledging staff and Rochelle for all the work that they've done. It's a tough job. I'm glad people like numbers and can work hard to get everything that you need so that you can verify that we're doing business in the right way.
All right, thank you very much. All of you have a good evening.
Thank you, Rochelle.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all the presentations. We'll move on to agenda item 4, the consent agenda. Madam Clerk?
A is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sylvia Ortiz granting fellowship, Highcrest, an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. B is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller approving a special event known as the Fiesta Topeka Mini Jamaica. C is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Valdivia Acla approving a special event known as Our Lady of Guadalupe 90th Annual Fiesta Mexicana. D is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Valdivia Acla granting a waiver to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 106120 relating to parking on unimproved surfaces for the Our Lady of Guadalupe 90th Annual Fiesta Mexicana. E is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Valdivia Acla granting Our Lady of Guadalupe an exception to the provisions of the City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. F is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Hannah Nager approving a special event known as the Circle Coffee Birthday Party. G is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Hannah Nager granting David Vincent an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. H is an ordinance introduced by Acting City Manager Richard Deinstead allowing and approving city expenditures for the period of April 29 to May 26, 2023, and enumerating said expenditures therein. I are minutes of the regular meeting of June 6, 2023, and June 13, 2023, and there's a list of cereal malt beverage applications, and staff is recommending approval.
Okay. We've heard the consent agenda is read by the clerk. Is there a motion to entertain?
Move approval.
Motion to approve by Councilman Emerson. Who was the second? Second by Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala. If you'll take the roll, please.
Councilmembers Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Alcala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
and Duncan.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay. Motion's been carried. We'll move on to agenda item number 5, action items. If the clerk will read.
A is a public hearing to consider amendments to the city's floodplain regulations and an ordinance introduced by Acting City Manager Richard Neinstead concerning floodplain management, amending sections 1730-010 through 040, 070, 090, 150, 170 through 220, and 250 and 260 of the Topeka Municipal Code, repealing original sections.
Mr. City Manager.
So, Mayor and Governing Body, I will ask Richard Faulkner, Development Services Division Director, to address you on this item.
Afternoon, Mayor and Council, or evening, after Mayor and Council. As you are aware or may remember, we are trying to join the CRS, which is a FEMA program, which will allow us to get a reduction in the insurance premiums for our citizens that are required to have floodplain insurance. The ordinance had been brought before you before, and when we sent it to FEMA and the state, they asked for the public hearing notice. And typically when we do the ordinance, we don't have a public hearing. So we had to take it back, and that's what's happening now. Tonight is the public hearing portion of adopting the ordinance so that we can send it in with the proper paperwork and dot all our i's and cross all our t's. So.
Thank you, Richard. Any questions for Richard before we proceed? No, seeing none, I'll go ahead now and at this time open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone present who would like to speak to the matter. Is there anyone present who would like to speak to the matter? And for the third time, this is a public hearing, and ask if there's anyone present who would like to speak to the matter. Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask the governing body.
Never mind. I think you're doing what I was going to remind you to do.
Yeah, just want to ask the governing body if you have any comment on what we just conducted here in the public hearing. None?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can do it now or later, but you can do it tonight.
Motion to approve by Deputy Mayor Dobler, second by Councilman Emerson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, if you call the roll, please.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Alcala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yeah.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
and Hofer.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay, motion has been carried. We move to item 5B, action item. If the clerk will read.
B is a public hearing for the purpose of considering written or oral objections to the proposed assessments on file in the office of the clerk on all lots, parcels, and pieces of ground liable for the cost of improvement, same being sanitary sewer improvement project number 401103 for Horseshoe Bend subdivisions number 6 and 7, authorized by resolution of advisability and authorization 9268, adopted and approved October 12, 2021, and an ordinance introduced by Acting City Manager Richard Neinstead, apportioning and levying a special assessment on certain lots and pieces of ground in the city of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas, in the area of Horseshoe Bend subdivision number 6 and 7 for the sanitary improvement project number 401103, as defined and described in resolution number 9268, adopted and approved on October 12, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Governing Body. Rochelle Matthews, Administrative and Financial Services Deputy Director, will address you on this one. as well as 5C and 5D.
Michelle?
Thank you, governing body. This is the official ordinance for the special assessments. This first one is for stormwater, so this is the process where the developers applied, we approved, the improvements are now done and ready to be levied to the property. So tonight's ordinance starts the process where we officially publish, then the prepayment period would start. Once the prepayment period is closed, all final values are tallied, passed on to the county and assessed to the property, then we would issue bonds to pay final costs for these projects.
At this time, this also requires a public hearing. So at this time, I open a public hearing and ask if there's anyone present who would like to speak to the matter. Is there anyone present who would like to speak to the matter? And for the third time, is there anyone present who would like to speak to the matter? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. And now, governing body members, if you have a comment or a motion.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, Director Copley correctly identified that these are sanitary sewer improvements, not stormwater improvements.
Okay. With that correction, any motion to entertain? Have a motion from Deputy Mayor. Second from Councilwoman Ortiz. If you call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Hiller. Did you call me?
Yes.
Valdivia Akala.
Yes.
Ortiz. Yes. Emerson.
Abstain.
Kell.
Yes.
Nager.
Yes.
Dobler.
Yes.
Duncan.
Yes.
Hofer.
Yes.
And Mayor Padilla.
Yes.
All right, we have 9 yes with Councilmember Emerson abstaining. The motion carries.
Motion's been carried, and we'll move to action item 5C, a related item as well. Acting City Manager, you want to speak? I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, first read.
C is a public hearing for the purpose of considering written or oral objections to the proposed assessments on the file in the office of the clerk on all lots and parcels and pieces of ground liable of the cost of improvement, same being street improvement project number 601130 for Horseshoe Bend subdivisions number 6 and 7, authorized by resolution and advisability and authorization numbers 9269, adopted and approved October 12, 2021, and an ordinance introduced by Acting City Manager Richard Neinstead, apportioning and levying a special assessment on certain lots and pieces of ground in the city of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas, in the area of Horseshoe Bend subdivisions number 6 and 7 for street improvement project number 601130, as defined and described in resolution number 9269, adopted and approved on October 12, 2021.
City Manager.
And Rochelle Matthews will address you again on this issue.
Michelle?
Thank you, governing body. This is the other side of this development, and these would be the street improvements, but all the same comments apply.
Okay. Okay, this also requires a public hearing. So at this time, I will open a public hearing and ask if there's anyone present who would like to speak to the matter. Is there anyone present who would like to speak to the matter? And for the third time, is there anyone present who would like to speak to the matter? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. And now ask for the governing body if they have any comment on this item.
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz, a second by Deputy Mayor Dobler. If he will call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Valdivia Akala.
Yes.
Ortiz.
Yes.
Emerson.
Yes.
Kale.
Yes.
Nager.
Yes.
Dobler.
Yes.
Duncan.
Yes.
Hofer.
Yes.
Mayor Padilla.
Yes.
And Councilmember Hiller.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Motion carried. We'll move to action item 5D, if the clerk will read.
D is a public hearing for the purpose of considering written and oral objections to the proposed assessments on file in the office of the clerk on all lots, parcels, and pieces of ground liable for the cost of improvement, same being street improvement project number 601124 for Aquarian Acres subdivision number 9, authorized by resolution of advisability and authorization 9211, adopted and approved February 16, 2021, and an ordinance introduced by Acting City Manager Richard Neinstead, apportioning and levying a special assessment on certain lots and pieces of ground in the city of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas, in the area of Aquarian Acres number 9 for street improvement project number 601124, as defined and described in resolution number 9211, adopted and approved on February 18, 2021, as amended by resolution number 9263, adopted and approved on September 21, 2021.
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager.
So Mayor and governing body, before I turn this over to Rochelle Matthews, I might just add for the public's sake, they are sitting there probably wondering, why are these people having all these public hearings? And what I would say to the public is these are all required by statute whenever you do special assessments. In fact, this is at the end of a long road of discussions that have been held before. But it is an opportunity to give those who have been special assessed an opportunity to appear before the governing body and ask any questions or make any comments about that. So the reason we're having all these is it's because it's required of us, and it's part of transparency on how we do financing.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. And, unusual that we have this many in one meeting, so, yeah, thank you for that. So at this time, I will open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone present who would like to speak to the matter. Is there anyone present who would like to speak to the matter? And for the third time, is there anyone present who would like to speak to the matter? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. And now I ask for governing body members if they have any questions or comment or action.
Motion to approve, Mr. Mayor.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Emerson. If you please call the roll, please.
Council members Ortiz?
Yes.
Emerson?
Yes.
Kale?
Yes.
Nager?
Yes.
Dobler?
Yes.
Duncan?
Yes.
Hofer?
Yes.
Mayor Padilla?
Yes.
Council members Hiller?
Yes.
And Valdivia Aquila.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Motion's been carried. Move to action item 5E. Madam Clerk.
E is an ordinance introduced by Acting City Manager Richard Neinstead concerning the Washburn University Board of Regents, amending Section 2-2050 of the Topeka Municipal Code and repealing original section.
Thank you, City Manager.
So Mayor and governing body, I will turn this over to our award-winning city attorney, and she will talk to you about the Washburn Board of Regents ordinance.
Okay, so this ordinance is required because of a state law change that happened this year. Up until July 1st, current law says that our Board of Regents are appointed by the mayor with approval of the city council from the 3 districts from which our state senators are elected. That probably made sense for a lot of years up until redistricting happened, and now we have 4 state senators that represent the city of Topeka. So that means you have some of our citizens that are not able to be represented on the Board of Regents, even though they're taxpayers. So they came up with a lot of creative solutions before lots of intelligent people pointed out to them that there are 9 city council districts, which divided by 3 makes a real easy way to divide that up, and you'll never have to fix that moving forward. So moving forward, the 3 Board of Regents districts will be Regent 1, comprised of Council District 2, 3, and 4, Regent 2, comprised of 1, 5, and 6, and Regent 3, comprised of 7, 8, and 9. And since we do redistricting every time in years or so, they will not have to change the law moving forward.
Thank you for that explanation. Councilman Duncan.
I'm sure this is in there, but just as written, this doesn't impact anybody currently sitting. It only takes effect when there's a vacancy.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions on this item? Is there a motion from the body?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilman Kell. Second, Councilwoman Ortiz. If you will call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
and Ortiz.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Motion's carried. We'll move now to action items 5F, if the clerk will read.
F is a resolution introduced by Acting City Manager Richard Neinstead, amending Resolution Number 9392 to revise the mill and overlay project list for 2023 citywide half-cent sales tax projects.
So our Public Works Director, Braxton Copley, is already at the table for you, and he's going to talk about how he's proposing that the 2023 half-cent sales tax can best be used for road repairs and maintenance.
Thank you. Braxton.
Thank you, governing body. Pretty straightforward. In March, I came in front of you and had a long list of projects that I'd identified for approximately $5 million of additional mill and overlay work. Once I got the projects divvied up, assigned them to consultants, got out their boots on the ground, we'd recognized that 2 of the projects that we had identified based on the 2019 PCI were actually in way better shape than the PCI score indicated. In fact, we just got the new PCI scores in, and these projects have PCIs ranging from 65 to 73, which actually makes them eligible for a microsurfacing, which is a much more reasonable, cost-effective solution than mill and overlay. And so we then went and went around that same area and identified 3 other projects, Swigert, Travis Circle, and Moretta Circle, that all had low PCIs that really lend themselves for mill and overlay. So in effect, I'm simply asking for removal of Evening Tide Way and Southeast 33rd, and substitute in lieu of those Swigert, Travis, and Moretta. Simple as that. I would ask for your approval of this resolution.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Copley? Councilwoman Hofer.
Okay, Braxton, I know there's at least one more that probably shouldn't be on the list. We have the consultants going out and checking as these are awarded.
I'm always open to look at additional streets. It's a never-ending process for me in terms of fielding complaints from citizens, looking at that to see how we can possibly program that into the very limited funding, and I try to do the best that we can and try to make logical decisions.
Well, I'm just asking if your consultant or the one who's going to go out and check them, if they find out that a road is not within what we consider, say it's graded at a 75, will you look for another project to replace it?
Yes, ma'am, as we did in this case, where we identified 2 roads that were in better shape than we thought. So we identified approximately 0.9 lane miles of alternative roads in that same geographic area.
Okay. I'll have one I'll talk to you about, but I'm not sure whether it should be on the list or not. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Further questions for Braxton? Okay. Is there a motion to entertain?
Motion to approve.
I think, motion to approve by Councilwoman Hiller, second by Councilwoman Ortiz. If you'll call the roll, please.
All right, council members Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yeah.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yeah.
Ortiz,
No.
and Emerson.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries. Councilmember Ortiz voting no.
Thank you. Move on to agenda item 5.6, the non-action items. If the clerk will read.
A is discussion on the City of Topeka 2023 to 2027 strategic plan.
Acting City Manager.
Mayor and governing body, Brad Vaughn, or Adam, sorry. Called this poor young man Brad all day, and I don't know why. But Adam Vaughn, Budget Manager, will walk this through you. And I thought just two things as I looked through this plan is the guiding principles, and let me repeat those: equity, sustainability, innovation, and municipal operations. It is important to keep all those in mind when you're working a strategic plan. And I think it is also important to talk, as you begin this discussion, about the three priority outcomes and strategies that you and staff have identified: housing, community appearance, and growth. So, Adam?
Great, thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, governing body. So like what was talked about, the strategic plan, the full document is in front of you. So you've all been involved since the beginning of the year in developing what our three priority outcomes would be. And we've had some different checks with you throughout to kind of make sure that we were going in the right direction as we were developing this plan. So this plan it's taken a lot of work from a lot of different staff members, a lot of different subject matter experts to really look at what can we do as a city to really advance all of these initiatives. And so what you have in front of you is a lot of work to be able to move the city forward in a productive way. So this is the opportunity for you to, again, come back to us with any suggestions or input that you may have in regards to the action plans that we've developed for these strategies.
Do you have a presentation to give
No,
us,
so
Adam?
just any feedback on the document is what we're looking for.
Okay, I just
this
wanted to
evening.
make sure.
No, sorry about that.
Okay. So I'm going to stand for questions or sit
Correct,
for questions, Adam?
correct.
Ready? Questions from the governing body? Councilman Duncan.
So walk us through, like, I don't mean it this broad, but how often we revisit this? I mean, I assume it's a living document, or at least it's intended to be. How often you expect to come back in front of us and say, here's where we're at, and kind of how often are we going to look at the checklist, I guess, and see where we're going from there?
Yeah, so our biggest priority in developing this specific strategic plan was to make it something that was actionable. And so you'll notice that a lot of the initiatives and action steps that are in it, that a majority of them are things that staff will begin working on very quickly within the near future. And so the idea is that it is very much a living document, that we want to have a lot of feedback and dialogue as we're going through these initiatives. So you should expect an update quarterly on the strategic plan.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. And I've been in touch with staff today, but I think I should share some of my thoughts here as well. One of the questions I had to start out with is, are we voting on this? And the answer was no. That apparently we voted, the council had one session to talk about what our priorities were and really went through a great process and came up with those three, I would call them development priorities. Well, we've had that conversation too. I'm very supportive of those development priorities as well as the guiding principles. But I did have some concerns about the language here. And so, for one thing, we've got a lot of new staff who are going to be eagerly looking at every word in this document and saying, that's what we're supposed to do, that's what the council wants us to do. And I think that there are some, I don't know how often you're going to work on the language, but there are some clarifications, omissions, and updates that really do need some attention. At a minimum, for instance, this document doesn't make it clear. It says the city's going to do this and the city's going to do that and the city's going to do the other thing. It's not real clear in some cases whether the city, it makes it sound like the city is the lead. But there are many places that we would be more of a partner or even a supporter. And we went out of our way the last time we did a strategic plan to make that clear. And I would suggest that each of those sections at some point ought to be coded as to whether we're lead, partner, or supporter, just to clarify to anybody who reads it, but particularly we have a lot of new staff who are really eager to do good work, and I don't want them to get a misdirection from that language. There are lots of language in here of the issues that are in the moment for us, which is good, but one of the things, for instance, there's lots about homelessness and some about development, but there really isn't language to speak of that addresses what the housing study claims is 4,300 substandard units and 6,000 vacant units, and those are high priorities for us as well, particularly those of us that represent the older neighborhoods in town. So I hope that those get phased in with some language. There's a lot of language in here about economic development, which as a rule we have farmed out to Go Topeka. And so clarifying whether we're planning to take over some of these things or whether we're just wanting to make sure that certain activities are happening on behalf of the city struck me as I was reading through it as well. There's also language about workforce, and we generally have not done that business. And so just those kinds of clarifications. Staff has a memo. I won't go through all of them, and I'm not sure I took the time to mention all the ones that I saw. I've offered to sit down with the specifics that I flagged on it. But again, I really appreciate the eagerness and the energy and the priorities that are here. But I do think we need some fine tuning on the plan itself. And perhaps just offering a period of time to us as a council to push us to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and give you the thoughts directly might be the best way to do it if this is our one chance to look it over in this session. Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. How's it going? I have to look behind to see. Nah, you're fine. Well laid out plan, lots of action items. The one thing I don't really see in here is who's responsible for these action items. So I guess just a general question, who's tracking this? Who's doing the work? And maybe following up a little bit on somebody's question previously, how often are we going to get some kind of report on how this is proceeding?
Yeah, so with the close tie to performance and measurement and goals and also funding of certain strategic initiatives, right now the development of the plan was within the budget office, and so we plan on continuing that development. We do have an internal document that has more specific individuals that calls out the finance department or finance director to specifically create this survey that's within the growth category. So we do have a document that we'd be happy to share with the governing body to give you a better idea of some of those responsible parties that we've identified. But again, we do plan to have these quarterly updates to kind of look at where some of these different initiatives are going and the progress we've made.
Thank you.
Councilman Duncan.
When I got on the council, I don't even remember if I had been sworn in yet or if it was right before or after I'd been elected. We did a strategic planning process. And the document that came out of that had some good stuff buried in it. But it really, I think even when we reviewed it like a year later, the conversation was, that's great, but it's so open-ended that we weren't, how do you measure things that are, too open-ended? And I think two important things, and I just want to commend everybody who worked on this, which I know was both the folks we brought in and staff, is it does have at least specific items. It doesn't just say we want to accomplish this. It says we can check this box and actually get to a measurable conclusion. and that's a vast improvement on the last one that we did. And it has timelines. It actually says we don't just want to do it. Our goal is to do it by this date, and that is our expectation. And I think some of the other things that council members Hiller and Dober brought up are good points about to make sure we get there in terms of who's guiding some of that. And but this is a marked improvement over that one, and I'm much more optimistic about its success than that one we had a while back. So thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. Honestly, with as large as this is, with the scope of it, I think it's, really good, and a lot of hard work went into all these meetings with, different stakeholders, et cetera. But I don't think quarterly, I feel comfortable with quarterly. I think actually because of the scope that we're looking at on here, monthly might be more of something I would feel comfortable with. If the governing body is not down to getting an update quarterly, I hope that there is also the option, without micromanaging, because I don't micromanage, to be able to have a monthly update on my own, or if other council people want to. So I understand the flow of the council may be cool with just doing it quarterly, but I don't really feel like I'm comfortable with that in how much is packed in here. I also am pretty much in agreement with Councilwoman Hiller in that I believe it's something that we should be voting on. That puts our mark on it, our seal, but with the whole, support of wanting to vote on it, it's not something that we're going, in my opinion, that we're going to be able to handle at tonight's meeting because it's so large. So that's food, for thought. But I am requesting that, for those of us that want to take a deeper look and have a better sense, that they be able to go into this every month rather than quarterly. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Well, it's clear, I'm hearing the sentiment that while we like the new format, I think that's all along been everybody's desire, is to have frequent updates because it takes away a lot of the guessing or assumptions that things are being accomplished. And as Councilman Duncan points out, with specific dates, it makes it really important that we know as we approach a certain date where we are in accomplishing that goal. So I think I hear that pretty clearly, and I would agree with it. We have for different reasons, scheduled presentations on a regular basis for something like this, and we may want to look at that, of doing that at, I don't know, at least once a month on a council meeting, so that not only the governing body as a whole, but the public as a whole knows how we are progressing with our efforts. And I think also, as Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala and others who may want to visit one-on-one with you, I have always believed that the staff has been very open to those kinds of meetings, either with one council person or two or three at a time, so that it doesn't take up all that time, because 9 people meeting you separately within a month, that's going to get pretty hard to handle as far as time. But if there is a desire to do that, I think that's something to consider, that a couple, 3 people can do it at a time, so that they can get that taken care of and get their questions asked. And I think some of the cleanup language that has been offered will probably be a part of that. Mm-hmm. So if you take that in consideration, Adam and Freddie, I think that this is an awful lot of information. I remember from first coming on the council myself, it's like, wow, how do you digest it all, remember it all, keep notes on it all, and keep track of that with everything else that we're doing? So I think that's a clear message that we're hearing. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. One more quick comment. Went through one of these planning sessions a while back and saw a quote, I think it was Stephen Covey, that had done a study, and when you have a plan like this and you have a lot of actions, he said if you have 2 or 3 actions, you're liable to get 2 or 3 done. If you have 4 to 10, you're liable to get 1 done. If you have over 10, you're likely to get none done. So I guess, and there is a lot of action items in here. I know this is over 4 years, but I guess I would suggest prioritizing, picking the top 3. If you can get 3 done every year for the next 4 years out of this entire plan, that's a win. I think with, staff, the staffing we have and the shortages and always looking, just the volume of work that city staff is faced with to keep the train running. I think, again, if you can do 3 a year, it's a good thing. So just a small bit of advice. Thank you.
Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. And with that, as adding on to what Councilman Dobler is saying, if that would in fact be the course that, is kind of like the governing body's wishes, because this is our strategic plan for the city, and there was a lot of engagement that we had in this. Is that then a new document that could be presented to us? And I honestly want to know what the pulse is, because a lot of time went into this of a lot of different individuals, and it feels like almost for us not to vote on it kind of feels like, okay, well, we dipped in, now we're dipping out, and we're kind of saying this and we're kind of saying that, but we don't know for sure what's going to be done on it. And so it kind of feels like a little loosey-goosey here, right? I am suggesting, I really like the idea of what Councilman Dobler is saying, pick so many, whether that be 3, 4, however many. Because when you look at it, it is just overwhelming. It reminds me of changing our culture of property maintenance on steroids. And Councilwoman Hiller and myself have really had to do a deep dive with staff on changing our culture. There's not going to be a deep dive, I don't think, with many of us in the governing body, with this. It's not to say that staff can't do it. It's just a lot. And so I am suggesting, I don't know if there's any juice here on council or not, that they come back with it, with what Councilman Dobler is suggesting, and us have just a little bit more dialogue and to really get the pulse if the council wants to vote on this, because I think we should. I would. Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that anybody right now, I'm going to make sure that I don't misunderstand, is in a hurry to vote on this as it is right now. So we really do want to take the steps to make sure that we've had the opportunity to discuss in detail. So to keep it from being loosey-goosey, I do think that it's important for us to reach out, work with the acting city manager, and really come to a point where we will feel very confident in the vote that we take, that we've set practical, reachable goals with an eye towards constant validation and improvement of what we're doing as we move forward throughout the time lapse of this document. So I think it's been pretty clear. I think Adam, everybody appreciates where we're starting from, and Freddie as well. I think that it gives us a document that we can really clearly understand. And I think if given the opportunity to visit with you and staff, that we'll find those, 3 to 5 different priorities as suggested by the deputy mayor. Because I think you do have to be practical in how much we can bite off and chew at the same time. So any further comments, acting city manager?
Thank you, Mayor and governing body. I appreciate what Councilman Dobler said, because he is exactly right on. This a great document, and what I've seen in 43 years is when we get to the strategic plan, it kind of falls apart because we didn't identify low-hanging fruit, so to speak. And get those accomplished. So I think we can take this back. I'm glad you're not ready to vote on it. We can take this back. I think our department directors could take a look at that, kind of help identify what their recommendations are to you, what the top objectives are to go after. And then if you would let me know any thoughts you have about any changes you might want to see us focus on more. We could take those into account and bring this document back to you. This is one of the best I've seen, and I appreciate what you put together, Adam. And it's a good starting point to have that discussion, because we need to have that in front of the public. We need to be having news releases out to the public, what it means for them. And it's a process, as you well know. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Further comment, discussion? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll go on record to say strategy 3.2, resource alignment, that's something that has been needed for a long time. We have a lot of resources, but again, we don't connect the dots, so we're duplicating. I'm seeing a lot of that in this document. I especially like the 3.2.3, provide city staff representation in relevant meetings and boards to ensure that the city is aware of community happenings and create opportunities to provide information and insight about resources available through the city. I remember we talked in our discussion, we were talking about free smoke detectors from the fire department, and also if they're dead, they have that application. I think it was Ernesto who's like, we have that. Our own city employees don't know what we have, and it's not a reflection on them. It's just we've got to educate them so they in turn can educate other people. And so I really like that one, but I do see a lot of duplications, and I look forward to working with staff to push this forward. We have NIAs, we have NAs, that newsletters go out monthly, and I've said this forever. We don't utilize them like we should. Christina and Karen have worked hard on changing the culture. And you know, people, if they knew better, they do better, but they can't know that, you know, a lot of them don't know that chair sitting on my porch is in violation. They can't have that chair, that big stuffed, oversized, lazy boy or whatever. And you know, if we can push our NIAs to also let them know how high your grass can get, you know, that's a part of education. If we can push them to see that, I think they would do better. Because, you know, even with our burning, I'll go back to that. You know, people don't know that you can't burn leaves. You know, that's been changed. It used to be you could, now you can't. They don't know that they can't burn in those barrels. Those barrels, you can't do that no more. And they're constantly doing it. So we've just got to do a better job of that. And I really liked when I seen that. So to promote it and foster development, I think that's great. I'd like to thank staff for doing that. And I will sit down and read it and see what else, but there is a lot of repetition, and I think our money could be utilized in a different way, but that's the main key. Let's utilize what we have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further comment? Discussion?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Freddie.
Thank you. So this document, I would say it is the culmination of multiple sessions with all the department heads in the city, with many stakeholders in the city at all levels. And it can be two things. One, it can be challenging to see the big picture of how the city can do all of these things within 4 to 5 years. But at the same time, I do see the need, and I do see the ability and the desire from all the departments, the department heads, most of the staff, I'm truly, truly proud of the document that we all built together. And I'm really, really proud that Adam took the lead to manage all of the directors of each department and everybody in the room to this conclusion, to this document. We hear your comments. I think that it is reasonable for us to show you the improvements that we're doing, to show you how we're moving the needle month by month. But I do see a lot of potential in this document, and I do see that within the next 4 to 5 years, we would be able, and we will be able, to accomplish more than a few tasks from here. Each of these individual tasks have an assigned 1 or 2 person. So we feel pretty comfortable and pretty confident that within this strategic plan, we will make the city a better place to live and a better place to work and to live in place.
Thank you, Freddie. I appreciate your comments. Seeing nothing further, thank you. We'll move on to the second non-action item. Discussion, Madam Clerk, if you'll read.
B is discussion related to the City of Topeka 2024 operating budget.
Acting City Manager.
I would, this is some of Adam's good work. And I would just say to the governing body, to the mayor and governing body, and to the public, this is the first step in a long process, as you know. And what Adam's going to show you is a first blush at some things that come to mind, and we need your feedback because this is the most important public policy document that elected officials ever work on, because it talks about where you want the city of Topeka to grow. Talks about a lot of things, street improvements, utilities, talks about the type of services you want, where you want to fund them. And so it's important that staff get your feedback so that we know we're on the right track with where you want to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Freddie.
Well, I would like to piggyback on the comments from the city manager. The 2024 budget, to my perspective, is the most important document that you guys can vote on, because it really established the priorities that you as the governing body wants to see for the city. And once again, it is my pleasure to pass it to our budget manager, Mr. Adam Vaughn.
Great. Thank you, Freddie. So this evening was a good time to get the update from the county appraiser. On Thursday, we got our estimated assessed value for the 2024 budget. So that value was up about 9% from last year's value. So just as a reminder of the process, we get an estimate of the taxable assessed value in June this time, and then in November that value is updated. And so this shows the history over the last 10 years of what the assessed value has been for the city. And so we wanted to call out in 2013 to 2014, we saw a significant decrease in assessed value, and it took another 7 years before the assessed value reached that point again. So we have seen this large growth in recent years, but it does occasionally fall, and it takes a while to recover, just based on some of the previous trends we've seen. Along with this, comparing the percent change in total property tax versus the percent change in inflation over this same period of time, property tax has been about 10% lower than the percent change of inflation during the same period. So with this history and context in mind, we wanted to go over again, the purpose of this presentation is really to get your direction so that we're on the same page as we're preparing the 2024 budget. So the items on this screen first shows the amount of tax levied if we were to keep our mill levy flat, which would be about that 9% increase from the previous year. So we have a couple items in here, and again, this is all preliminary. We're not committed to any of these items, but these are just a couple of items just to help the discussion move along this evening. So property tax relief, low barrier shelter support, and then of course the moving a couple geo bonding items to operating funds. So these were items that were identified as opportunities to move some of these yearly programs into operating cash to avoid some of the extra bonding costs. So we already talked about firm, and then there's a couple other here. So continuing the conversation, so 1 mil is about $1.4 million. So for a house that's valued at $175,000, a flat city mill levy would result in $784 that is paid in city property taxes. If we were to decrease the mill levy by 1, then that same house valued at $175,000 would pay $764 in city property tax, a difference of $20 over the year. Also a reminder, the city is only about 25% of the total mill imposed in the city of Topeka. So there's a lot of other taxing entities that also have a mill rate. So our city mill is just a small portion of that whole picture. So again, with the 1 mil decrease, and again, this isn't what would actually happen. This is just to further the conversation of if we were to decrease the mill levy by 1, again, it's $1.4 million of revenue that's less. So with the 1 mil decrease, it's about a 6% increase in total taxes levied. So we'd still be able to do a lot of things with the budget, but there's other trade-offs that we would have to make if we did lower the mill levy. So again, this presentation is to make sure that we're on the same page to get a general direction from you of how you would like us to prepare the 2024 operating budget. And with that, we'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Adam. Questions from the governing body? Councilwoman Valdivia Acala.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so my main question is going to be about the low barrier shelter. We know from what the consultant has said that it's going to take about 5 months for us to even come up with any kind of suggestion. So I see this $1 million, and I know, trying to plan in advance, et cetera. But so far, the governing body has seen nothing at all of what would equate to that. So that's one side of it, where that number came from. Then there's the other side of it. We're not going to be done with the consultant for probably not until November. So then that's the other side of it. And then my additional questions on that, understanding these are just questions, and I don't know where you guys are getting your numbers from, is, what are we looking at in the way of aggressive, grant writing? What is that looking like when we look at this $1 million? Because all of that money, there is a flow out of money right now at the federal level for reducing, homelessness, unsheltered. I understand a big chunk of that, is going to be going to larger cities where this, their issues pale, or our issues pale in comparison to what big cities are dealing with. So I know this is just preliminary talk, but I would really like to understand where that 1 million, because it's going to all come back to my concern about there being a wealth of information left out in pockets. We can't ask City Manager Wade because he's on leave. I don't feel that the mission's the most forthcoming. That's my opinion. So I want to know where these numbers are coming from. Thank you, Mayor.
Do you have a response, Adam?
Yeah, my response is we're not committed to that $1 million. That was just a figure. We don't have to spend that $1 million on a low barrier shelter. This is just to have that amount in there to know what the trade-offs would be as we're preparing the budget and setting the mill levy. So we don't have any advanced talks on any conversations with that. That was just a plug figure.
Yeah, I think that is a little too soon to talk about the details on that low barrier shelter at this point. The $1 million was established to determine our budget primarily. So there's this specific topic is very fluid at this point.
Okay. Follow up, Mayor?
Council, okay, go ahead, and then Deputy Mayor Dobler.
Okay, I understand. There's no criticism here. This is not about you guys being given that number. I want to understand how whoever got to that number, because I know that we're not just throwing out a number, and I'm not even saying you guys. Okay, I know that you get your information from other places. So that's what I'm saying. If you're asking me right now, I believe we are definitely going to need a low barrier shelter. And I understand the fluidity of how figures can change. I'm just staking it out here right now that in these discussions, if that number is going to be put in there, or if it's not going to be put in there, or to have the overall discussions period about low barrier, because with the consultant, there were some that were saying that, well, maybe it doesn't even need to get to that point because our data is so abysmal. I'm not talking about any particular entity's data being abysmal. I'm saying us as Topeka, our information on the scope of the problem that we're looking at with the unsheltered is lacking, like hugely lacking. So that's all. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Adam, I'm trying to follow your couple of slides here. So you're showing moving from bonding to operating 4 items: firm, traffic signal replacement, traffic safety program, fleet replacement. And then we talk about lowering the mill levy, and you strike out 3 of those. So are you suggesting that we can't? I mean, is that the conclusion is if we lower the mill levy, we can't do those 3 items?
No, and it was probably a bad way to represent that slide. So with those particular projects, that would just be how they are funded. And so those would still be funded with GO bonds. Just if we didn't, we would be able to cash fund those projects. And again, that's just an example. We can pull different levers and have different cuts if we did the 1 mil decrease. But that was just an example.
Because I believe with the CIP discussion last week, ultimately we ended up just moving the firm.
Right.
Correct.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And then, I mean, the missing equation, I assume you probably talk about this next week, is the other element of the general fund is sales tax. So it could also fund some of the increase in sales tax revenue could also fund some of these programs, correct?
And so what I will say is that these calculations do include the total revenue that we expect in the general fund. And in sales tax in particular, we've been much more aggressive with our estimates based on how performance has been with sales tax. It's where Freddie's expertise comes into play. As he's been able to run some models of that give us a good idea of what we're looking at for sales tax for the 2024 budget.
So in this case, I would say that having a flat tax levy would allow the city to reduce dependency on debt, would reduce the ability, it will increase our ability just to cash fund some of these yearly operating items that we would like to remove from the CIP. And I think that we had a pretty robust discussion over the past 8 weeks regarding CIP, regarding bonding, and those type of things. So keeping it flat would significantly support that initiative.
And I guess if I could, Mayor, the last comment, and I'll probably take the report from the CPA and the other 20 CPAs home and read it later, but I did find the figure for reserves in there, and at the end of 2022, we had 28.2% reserves for the general fund. I think we have this discussion every year, and it seems like it keeps going up. I don't know how that happens, but I'm intent on driving that down to, I don't know what the correct number is. Is it 22.5%? Is it 25%? All I know is it's not 28%. That is taxpayers' money that's sitting in the bank that's worth less now than it was when we collect due to inflation. And we're going to spend, if I have anything to say about it, we're going to spend down the reserve to a reasonable amount. And I think our policy says 15%, which is probably too low. 20 would be comfortable, but 28 is too much. So you were looking for input from the council. You got input from 1 out of 10. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but we're driving that baby down if we can. Thank you.
Councilman Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. A few things, and Freddie and Adam have heard some of this. I gave them some heads up, but I'll just tee off first of what Councilman Dobler said. In fact, when Freddie came here, he said, what are we going to talk? What am I going to hear from you when we get to the budget? And I said, Freddie, I'm 0 for 3 on this. But in 3 years of budget, I have come here every year and said exactly what Councilman Dobler and I have said, sort of the same thing. We set a threshold of 15%. We seem way up in the high 20s. And if that threshold needs to be 20, great. Let's put it in front of us. Let's change that policy so that we're not having this fight. And then let's keep it at 20% so we don't always have millions of dollars sitting in reserves. So I want to echo that, and hopefully maybe we can get to 1 and 3 and we can get a victory this year and get it done in my 4th year here. But so Councilman Dobler is right on that one. The second thing is, again, broken record. Look, the valuations in Shawnee County were 13.1%-ish. By the time you factor in commercial, it looks like our assessed value is about 9%. The reality of that is we can lower the mill levy and we are still bringing in additional dollars than we were last year. Plain and simple, that's the math. I will continue to ask for some sort of mill levy decrease as I have every year and hope that we can maybe figure something out. And the third thing is, I have no idea if we need a low barrier shelter or should be paying for it. I think I know, and I think we've talked about it and we've heard things from the community, but the reality is we have not had one single conversation in this body about what our policy is going to be moving forward as the city of Topeka, about what we're going to pay for, invest in, what the long-term impacts are, where it's going to be, who's going to operate it. Not one single conversation. And yet here we are talking about $1 million put aside that probably if we end up doing it, we could take out of reserves for next year and then start budgeting accordingly. Just going to throw that out there. Which is then impacting us saying that if we keep that in there, then we can't lower the mill levy and we can't pay cash for traffic signals and safety and fleet replacement. We may very well need to invest in a low barrier shelter. But until we have a conversation in this body, probably multiple conversations, and until we hear from our person at the end of the year, I think it's almost irresponsible for us to start budgeting for that, knowing what it takes away from our other programs. And I think we can figure it out next year if we get to that, which I know makes finance people so nervous. I get it. I understand it completely. But I think we do have some buffer we can look at to use for that year, knowing if we decide it moving forward. So that's just my concern is, I think if I'm the public and I'm seeing $1 million for a low barrier shelter, they have the same question I have was, when did we talk about that? Because we haven't talked about it, and we need to. We absolutely need to. So I'm not saying that to cut that conversation off or not want to have it. I just know that if it's having that big of an impact on our budget right now, we can probably wait a little bit. So thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Allen and Mr. Vaughn, thank you for bringing this forward, and think the world of you guys, and you guys do great. I always feel like that we have you up here, you bring us this stuff, and then you get 10 people to point out all the mistakes or the disagreements. So thank you for being good sports and having thick skin. And my shot at you will be this. First of all, I'll go on record. I to the extent that our increase is going to be more than inflation, then I'm for reducing the mill levy down to that. But my question is, though, on slide 8 here, it has property tax relief of $500,000, and I guess I'd argue we're giving $1.5 million of property tax relief, aren't we, if we do the decrease? So I think you could take that $500,000 off right there. So, and then you could use you could use it to do some of those other things that got struck out. And I know no matter what you guys did, we were going to find a problem with it. So, but thanks, guys. I do appreciate this for discussion.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess for the general discussion, I'm okay with leaving our mill levy the same as long as we work smart. I think we've talked through the CIP process. We really have the chance of a lifetime, or certainly our careers, however you want to look at it, to make a real dent in our debt load and to get things back in the operating budget that belong there. And as you already know, that's a high priority to me. At the same time, what I know is in the strategic plan, there was some discussion. There are all sorts of initiatives that have started that staff has worked hard on, that they think we support anyway, and for the most part, I think we do. I don't know how that money adds up. We've added a substantial number of staff positions in the past year. I don't know where that looks like or where the money came from. I don't know. There are all sorts of suggestions in this strategic plan to add more positions. I don't know what that budget's going to look like. And so my charge to you would just be, I want it to be as lean as possible. You've had people talk already about some redundancies in that strategic plan. There are so many moving parts. I can't figure it out. But if in the budget process, by the time we get that document, the staff has done whatever magic they need to do to sync up these projects, and you're able to show us what the personnel is going to look like and how it compares to the past, I think it will help us all, help me, but I think all of us make some sense out of it. And hopefully that, I'm afraid we're going to need the budget done before all that's worked out, but maybe it's farther along than I know. So I just wanted to acknowledge that those kinds of things are there. We talked also from the strategic plan side about what the city's name is on and what it really isn't. Just as an example about the low barrier shelter that Councilman Duncan mentioned, we're not clear on those things yet. So I guess you'll have to take your best guess at what our priorities should be, but we all are going to need to be on deck to be watching and saying, oh, wait a minute, not that, or yeah, where's that, and so on, because this is quite a year of change for us. Again, I'm willing to see it stay the same if that's what we need to make those moves on debt reduction, which is long-term, huge savings and cost effectiveness for taxpayers. And if we don't do it now, this opportunity may never come again. But at the same time, want that budget. We've made some serious commitments to salaries and support for our staff. I think we all feel good about that. I don't know quite how that adds up either, and so eager to see what you've done, but those are my overall thoughts on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you. Just going back to the low barrier shelter, I am definitely willing to, as we deepen into this, right, everything that Councilman Duncan is saying about the conversations that have not been had that we need to have, et cetera, need to wait for the consultant, all of this information to come forward, and just be very mindful and digging deep into this, that this is something as a governing body, there's so many things that we have not talked about that we need to with this unsheltered, the encampments, which we know are getting worse. I mean, today was just like so epic in its amazement with everything that was happening with that, and keep it at this governing body level. And I'm going to push that it not go into any kind of committee. But I would agree with him is that until we know where that number, came from, City Manager Wade said, well, it's going to cost about $1 million to run a low barrier shelter. And I was like, what? Where'd you get your numbers from? And never received any information on that. So numbers are flying around somewhere in the background that I hope we can get hold of. But the other thing is that, you know, with the reserves, budgets are not my thing, but I do remember about 15 to 17% of reserves, and now it's almost to 29%. So I also have a lot of agreement with what Councilman Dobler is saying as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Further comments? Before we move on to public comment, I'll add that I think this is a good discussion, and I believe it's helpful for Freddie and Adam to hear it, because I think that does give you some direction as to the detail that we're requesting. I do think and agree with Councilman Duncan that I think the conversations about a low barrier shelter got ahead of themselves in that without having even a final report from our consultant to see if any of that even would affect what we would move forward with in addressing the homeless shelter is premature. So certainly there is a lot more to discuss, consider, while we still, in the capacity that we have right now, address those needs to the unsheltered. But there's no, in my opinion, no movement to move forward until we're ready to move forward. And that takes a lot of different things to take into consideration as a governing body. And we'll get to that point eventually. I just want to make sure that people don't feel that they're being left out of any conversations once we start to have those. If that's the case, then let me know. We'll make sure that everybody is included so that no one feels that they're excluded from any of those discussions. So we will now move on. Acting City Manager.
So if I may, Mayor and governing body, I appreciate the discussion you have, and I'm going to make some esoteric comments here. I appreciate what Councilwoman Badia Alcala had to say, and I've been practicing that phonetically, okay? So I just want to say that. And what Councilman Duncan had to say. And if I could offer you any advice, I don't know where the $1 million came from. That's a legitimate question. I have not found anywhere where the $1 million came from. I think our focus ought to be, and I'll have some further things in the next couple of weeks to say about homeless, is what's our responsibility? Where should we put money into homelessness, or should we? How should we interact with our partner, and what's the right number? Now, I will tell you, we have a moral obligation. The homeless are our population. There are mothers, there are fathers, there are brothers, there are sisters, there are our next door neighbor at any bad time in their life. So I think we do have an obligation, but I think that's a discussion you have to work through and say, we're willing to allocate X amount of dollars, and this is put towards these programs, or this is how we're going to do it. Because I can tell you from past experience, the money adds up pretty quickly. So I would just suggest to you that that's the discussion we ought to have you ought to have at some point, governing body members. And I truly appreciate your discussion on this subject tonight.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to public comment now. We have a number of people signed up. I will call them in the order that we received them. First is Mr. William Brandlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the governing body.
Once again, I'm here to talk about PUD 2302, or as it's come to be known, 2303. In your mailboxes this week, you should have gotten this comparative chart. I'd ask you to refer to it when I'm speaking. It lists all the assumptions. You can tell how the numbers came. If you can't tell how the numbers came, the city clerk has my phone number and email address if you want to call me. What we're going to talk about is how the neighborhood will be recharacterized if 2302, 2303 gets through. First of all, let's talk about density. The lot size per the residential unit of 2302 is half the lot size for the surrounding neighborhood. It's a quarter of an acre per unit versus half an acre per unit in the existing neighborhood. The living unit density of PUD 2302, it's 3 times that of the neighborhood. They're going to have 3 times as many people there as there are in the existing neighborhood, which is the same size, basically. The population density of the PUD 2302 is twice that of the existing neighborhood. On the same amount of property, they're going to have twice as many people as we have now. I don't know how you could say that that's a common characterization of the neighborhood. That's all dissimilar characterizations. Okay? PUD 2302 residents, they're transient renters in and out on an irregular basis. The existing property owners are all property owners. Most of them have been there for 30 or 40 years. We have a 98-year-old lady that's been there since 1956. In our neighborhood, we have single-story ranch-style homes. The homes in PUD 2302 are certainly not single-story ranch-style homes. It's hard to tell what they are. I asked a couple architects, and they couldn't even tell me what kind of architecture it was. It's like somebody got crazy with a pencil. Okay. 2302 is going to add 3 times the vehicle trips in and out onto Rochester Road than the existing neighborhood. If you multiply it out, that's 43,000 more trips in and out annually, 3,600 monthly, 120 daily. All of the zoning north of Soldier Creek, west and east of Rochester Road, and north of Walnut Lane to Menninger Road, it's already zoned R1. No multi-resident zoning anywhere in the PUD rezoning area. I mean, I don't think we have any problem if they keep it R1 and they build houses that are single-family homes. Okay, and then I would also remind you that in 2006, the city council on this very piece of property denied a similar rezoning request, probably for these same reasons. Mr. Mayor, could I get another minute?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. Second by Councilwoman Valdivia. Those in favor say aye.
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 Go ahead and proceed, sir.
Thank you. Okay, the second thing I'd like you to make reference to is a single page, which is part of the new Planning Commission study. If you recall, the City Council remanded back to the Planning Commission 4 items. Just on the face of this, PUD 230203 should be rejected, okay? The traffic study depends on it depends significantly on a mysterious, unapproved Shawnee County Rochester Road improvement, whose construction will begin in 2029 and end in 2031. Okay? If you look at the traffic study and where they conducted it, can I finish?
Yes, sir.
Can I finish? I should have asked for two. Is that okay?
You should have asked for two.
Yeah.
But please,
I will, I promise.
complete your comment.
The traffic study was conducted south of Northwest 25th and north of Manager Road. The property that we're talking about, the traffic study was done outside that area. The south, that's basically the Walmart parking lot, and north of Manager Road. So they did a traffic study in an area that doesn't even resemble what PUD 23 is talking about. And my question is, where are these guys getting their numbers? What are they doing? You know, they don't consider stuff that should be important for the recharacterization, and then they do a traffic study that they should have done in the first place, but they do it in the wrong area. And I'd ask you just to remember this when it comes time to vote. Thank you for the extra time, and I appreciate your thinking about this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I have Drusilla Absher. Pronounce that correctly? Drusilla Absher. Okay. Katie T.
I'll try to make this pretty short and simple. I came home after working a 14-hour shift Saturday morning, work overnights in Edgerton. And I came home to find a homeless encampment in front of my driveway. The house that I live in with my wife, that house is bought to enjoy the view of not the other side of the street, but the spillway, the trees, the tree line specifically. I had no idea that they could camp out there for an indefinite amount of time. But according to Park Police, who told them otherwise, because it's city property, they can. And there's nothing that we can do about it. You guys, I'm sure, can assume my concern with this, property values and whatnot. I would like you guys, the short version, as fast as you can, to come up with an ordinance to ban homeless encampments in residential areas. I understand the city of Topeka owns this little area, but if I wanted to sell my house tomorrow, I couldn't. So if you guys could do something pretty swift and peacefully, obviously, to remedy the situation, because it's going to get even more out of hand than it already has in just a few days. That would be amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Todd Fargo. Mr. Fargo?
Yes, Fargo. Mr. Mayor and governing body, appreciate the opportunity. I'm here as my neighbor and I and a few other neighbors are here that experience the same, that we have a homeless camp now on our street. I'm a few houses up, and we take a lot of pride in our neighborhood. I would welcome any of you to drive down our street and see how well manicured all the houses are, the lawns. We take a lot of pride in it. We have no neighbors across the street because it's the tree line of the creek, which we take care of also. I know the city is supposed to, but we take care of it a little better. Okay. KSNT did a segment last night on the news. I don't know if some of you may have seen that. I'd be glad to send that to your emails if you have not. You will see shopping carts. You know what goes along with the homeless camps. It's getting real close. I mean, it's in our neighborhood now. And I worry that we allow one, you know what's going to happen. We're going to have multiple people. I worry about the trash. I worry that they are going to be going to the bathroom right there in our neighborhood, you know, right there. Their camp is 15 feet off the road. There's no way to drive by it without it popping out at you. It's not like it's hidden. The park police, from what I understand, according to KSNT, showed them, pointed and said, this is where you can be because you were in a flood zone before. We are in a flood zone. I sent an email of a picture, and I drew a triangle. Hopefully you guys are able to see that. I drew a triangle where their camp is. It's in a flood zone. Our whole street is a flood zone. So if it's a legal thing, they're still not legal if they can't be in a flood zone. I don't know what the solution is with our homeless. We know we've had a problem, but now it's getting into the residential neighborhoods. And I can imagine my neighbors, how they feel, and it's right across the street. If they feel unsafe, you worry about things being stolen, and you hate to stereotype that way, but it is what it is. And I would just hope that something can be done. And the park police, I don't know if that's the Shawnee County Parks and Rec Police. Another 30 seconds?
You have another minute.
Okay. I don't know if that's, I don't know who to address there because I don't feel it's right to come say, okay, here you are in our neighborhood now. And that doesn't seem right. And there has been some conflict with some of the other neighbors, verbal conflicts, and I hate to see it get out of hand. And again, I don't know what the solution is, but I sure don't think it is putting them in our neighborhood. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to. I will send all of you that link for KSNT. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Corey Chandler. Corey Chandler.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And I am about this homeless problem that we have as well. I cannot reiterate more than what my two fellow blockholder homeowners have just told you, with the exception that I'm losing my voice as well, because I'm talking to anybody who will listen. Please, please make this a law. Get them out of our residential area. I don't want anybody to be homeless, ever. I bought my home 20 years ago. I look out my window, have a cup of coffee, and now I see a homeless person out there, half naked. Now we have cars driving up and down our street. 5-minute stops here, 5-minute stops there. I don't know if they're doing drugs. I called the police, they can't do anything. I called the police Saturday because my life was being threatened because I was trying to be nice to go out there and tell them that the cops were called. The corner house was the one who called him. He admitted to it, but I'm the one that had my life threatened. I am not a feeble one. I will protect myself if I have to. I need to do this legally and go through you guys. I've asked the police department. They tell me there's not anything they can do about it. Come talk to you. How would you like to wake up in the morning and look out your window and see people living in a tent or a tarp? what was once beautiful? How would you like to have your life threatened for no other reason than you went over there to warn them that the cops were coming? How would you like to put up extra security around your house just because someone is living across illegally? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. It's not illegal because it's city property. So that means I can go over there and cut down trees, which I called the police for, because that's exactly what they did. The police can't do anything because it's a homeless law. There is no homeless law, we found out. We also found out that I lost my place. There is a city ordinance, 12, that is 12.65.040. It is against city ordinance for any man, woman, or child to destroy any city property that has trees, brushes, or anything else on it. Yet the police will not do anything about it. We had one police car come by today that decided that they were going to give them some kind of extra tarp to cover them up. It happened to be a camo tarp. Great, they're not such an eyesore now that they're blue, but guess what? They're still there. And I hate to say it, my house owner mate who just left is right. You have one, now you're going to have 5. How would you like to get up in the morning and see these people sitting right in front of your damn window? All right. You guys put in a you guys on May 3rd put a test in to where you spend $500,000 to $8 million for rundown properties. And I believe one $8 million property that you bought was condemned. So that's $8 million down the toilet. I am not 100% sure on this, but I would like to see this money go there instead of to rundown properties, unless it's going to be built for the homeless.
Miss, do you want more time?
May I have one more minute?
You sure that's enough?
No, it's never enough.
Okay,
But yes.
I don't, just a moment, we have a procedure.
Yes, please.
Move to second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
2 minutes.
Thank you, sir. So why can't we take some of that money and put it towards the homeless people? We have an issue. I don't want to see anybody be homeless. I don't want anybody to be without food. But if they're not going to the homeless shelters because they have a dog, buy this rundown piece of property, which is a hotel, fix it up, put this married couple in it, down in the basement or on the parking lot, put in a single dog kennel, and get them off the street. Force our law enforcement people to do their jobs and not just throw their hands up and say, hey, well, great, I got them to move. They're over here now. Not my problem. It is our problem. It's everybody's problem. I don't have a solution other than to say that. I would like to have a solution for this, but I'm coming to you guys. You guys have to be our solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Brianna Johnson.
Good evening. I wasn't much of a speaker in high school, and I'm not any better now, so I do apologize. My name is Brianna Johnson, and I am a very proud first-time homeowner in the Valley Park community. One of the things I love about my home is the beautiful tree line across the street. It's a Shunga Creek runoff surrounded by trees that's owned by the city of Topeka. Last Saturday, it came to my attention that you can camp on this property and the city of Topeka property as long as you want. I've done as much research as I can the last few days, and I can't find a law or regulation that permits or denies this action, leaving the topic in a gray area. The property that I thought was safe and protected to live across from is now seems to be fair game to anyone. While a homeless person setting up a camp is the most common thing, there is also a much larger safety issue at hand. There is initially nothing stopping a stalker, an abusive ex, an evicted renter, a thief, or worse, from setting up a tent and hanging out across the street. There are no bathroom facilities or trash receptacles for anyone that is camping, causing a sanitation and a litter concern. Nobody wants to buy a house next to a homeless camp. Nobody wants to rent a house with an evicted tenant right outside. Nobody wants to feel unsafe in their neighborhood. I plead and urge the City Council to, if it is not, please ban camping on properties that are owned by the City of Topeka, or at the very least, ban camping on residential neighborhoods like parcel R47549 at 23rd Street and Valley Park. Letting this continue is putting the lives of your residents at risk and threatening the safety of our community that we are raising our children in. This is one small change. This is one small change that can make our cities and neighborhoods safer. Thank you.
Thank you. Lissy Hund, is that correct?
It's Lisa.
Lisa? They didn't put an A on it.
Okay. It's spelled with the E.
Okay. Lisa.
Yes, good evening. My name is Lisa Hund, and I am a member of the Affordable Housing Committee of Topeka Justice Unity and Ministry Project, or JUMP. We are here again to implore you all to move forward with the next step in utilizing the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, to call together the Affordable Housing Review Committee so they can begin issuing requests for proposals to housing developers. This governing body has already identified equitable and affordable housing as one of the top 3 priorities for our city in your capital improvement plan. It is commendable that this governing body has acknowledged this crucial issue and made it a priority. However, prioritizing housing is only the first step. We must take proactive measures to turn our intentions into tangible outcomes. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund is a powerful tool that can significantly increase the stock of affordable housing. But this tool remains dormant, gathering dust while our fellow residents struggle to find a place they can call home. We must bring together the review committee, whose purpose is to ensure the effective allocation of funds and resources to support affordable housing initiatives. Their expertise and oversight are vital in identifying suitable projects and implementing strategies that will make a meaningful impact on the lives of our citizens. The longer we delay the activation of this crucial committee, the more individuals and families will find themselves on the brink of homelessness. More than 10,000 households in Topeka are living with relatives or friends, or paying more in rent than they can afford, or are living in unsafe conditions. It is your responsibility as representatives of the community to ensure that the most vulnerable among us are not left behind. Allow me to take a quote directly from the housing study that the City of Topeka paid for back in 2020 to illustrate the need for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Quote, "Many households are forced to make tough decisions, such as choosing to live in an affordable unit in poor condition or be cost burdened and live in a better quality unit. For these reasons, finding new ways to produce affordable housing, such as through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, is critical to producing more units, stretching dollars further, and ultimately meeting a critical housing need." End quote. Imagine the positive ripple effects that can emanate from activating the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Families will have stable homes, allowing children to focus on their education and parents to concentrate on their employment. Our community will flourish when its members can thrive in safe and affordable housing. I will remind you all that right down the road in Lawrence, their functioning Affordable Housing Trust Fund has resulted in the addition of 645 new affordable housing units in the past 5 years. This is the potential that our Housing Trust Fund can provide. You can demonstrate your commitment to equitable and affordable housing by activating the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and convening the review committee. The time for action is now. JUMP has a seat on the Affordable Housing Review Committee, and we will continue to be present at every city council meeting every week until this review committee is activated. When that step happens, it will be another opportunity for the city to show its residents that affordable housing in Topeka is a top priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Henry McClure.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. Your Honor, council members, city manager, welcome to Topeka. This has probably been the most eye-opening city council meeting I've ever attended. The reserve issue is really eye-opening. If I were a listing, if I were going to come here to list the city of Topeka, I would tell you those reserves have no value. As a taxpayer, I'm just astonished that you've got my money just sitting there in reserve, or not much of mine. But if you were going to underwrite the city, you'd take the net operating income, you'd take the income and expenses, you'd come up with a net operating income. You could put a cap rate on it. If the whole deal is to break zero, that's fine. Based on your credit rating, you ought to be able to borrow money for emergencies. But speaking of listings, that's why I came here today. It's kind of interesting. My day started out in Steve Bauman's office. I'm serious. Because what I wanted to know today was how much a piece of real estate would be worth without the improvements on my newest listing. Because I want to remove the asphalt and the building. And I think that, so what I'm here to solicit to the Jetto people that vote for some economic development help, because if I could get this guy to agree to it, I'm pretty close to it, we'll tear down the Travelers Hotel right by the new KTA building. And I think it would be really interesting to see how many police calls you get there. But what I'm trying to do right now is leverage the interest that we've had up on the boulevard and taking the carryover down to that Travelers project. Because that project is worth a lot more shovel-ready without the improvements. And I also think there's probably a safety issue to that side of town to not have that there. So I want you to be open-minded and think about that. I actually have a clause in my listing where I don't have to put a sign up on there until it's gone. And I had some signs vandalized over on Rochester Road because the neighbors don't want a project. And I'm sure that my signs would get destroyed. But real quickly, lastly, so we've got to stop bringing down our life to 4 minutes. And let's start getting out ahead of the program. So I want to talk to you about the idea of Elevation Parkway going to Wanamaker Road. So we're talking about Elevation Parkway, but if we take the road to Wanamaker Road, you're going to be able to attract a lot better people for the development. I just want to work on my 36 acres. I don't want to conquer the world, but it does open up 750 acres of land for private development. But more importantly, the MTPO has not met in person in 3 years. And we should be getting public involvement for the projects. We should be engaging the public and get the public to say, yeah, we're behind this project. It's not Henry McClure. And more importantly, we need to have a sign on there that says, this road was funded with a CID. We don't wait till the minute we want to put it up by the cash register. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next on the agenda are announcements. Start with the city clerk.
We have no agenda to cover. There's no meetings for the next 2 weeks.
Can you repeat that?
Louder, right?
Okay. Richard, city manager?
Well, I have a number of them, so bear with me. But the first and most important one is to introduce my wife to you, Rita Mae Neinstead, who is, please stand up, Rita. That's my wife. She has spent all day here at the city offices and the evening also. So, thank you, Rita. There will be a special meeting on July 25th of the governing body. So budget discussion is what the topic is. All right? And you will have the agenda by July 13th. Emerging Leaders. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Emerging Leaders Academy, but it is... I've sent a number of employees to it over the years. You've had a number in there, and it is a good opportunity for especially those mid-level managers, those mid-level supervisors, to learn more about leadership. And we had 4 city employees who graduated on Friday: Leah Bowling, Jason Schumacher, Amanda Lister, and Real Guevara. So congratulations to them for completing that. We talked about homeless tonight. I would, let me real quickly say this before I get to the chief, is that we will have a report on homeless in a couple weeks. And one of our staff members were at a meeting that happened last week. We had a discussion today, but we'll have a item on there, kind of talk about what happened there, where that's going, and kind of start the discussion about where we ought to go. So I asked the chief today, because he had a lot of homeless interactions over the weekend, to give you an update report on those situations. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome. I guess I needed to get my steps in, so I went back and came back up. We had a number of updates. Obviously, the one that got a lot of comment from the public. I've spoken with Park Police. I'll let them make their statement in regards to the accuracy of the information that they relayed. We are doing outreach efforts for that, and we hope to build a rapport and come to a resolution on that one. So that's 22nd Park in Washburn area. There was also a couple that were up north that we have made some resolutions on and made some progress on. So I think what I would just like to take in the next minute or so, we could talk specifics, and I know that Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala is aware of some of the progress that we've made on specific sites, but I just wanted to reiterate to the council and to the acting city manager that we have a process. Due process is a big part of it. Certainly there's a lot of options that are available that are very specific as far as different ordinances, but a lot of the ordinances are just citable and they're not arrestable. So we have to balance those things when you hear, and I know this council is very well aware of those distinctions. So we are very active at the police department with the behavioral health unit and the homeless outreach teams on trying to resolve the individual components and situations that come up across the city. So I would encourage, the council does a great job. The public, I would encourage them to continue to call. I know it can be a frustrating process, and it is a process, but we have become very educated about different aspects of it. And so we are moving forward with a number of projects to include a couple of public safety cleanups that have occurred, a couple more that are on the schedule, and I think that will be part of a more detailed update from that working group. But I just appreciated the acting city manager's opportunity to come up and speak for the council and let you know that we are actively engaged and to keep the information flowing, and we are dedicated to continuing to deal with these situations on a one-on-one basis and also developing a more comprehensive strategy with the help of the consultant and the working group.
Appreciate the update, Chief. I think sometimes we make an assumption that you're on the job and getting things done, but it's good to get the update every now and then so that we can all share, and it's shared with the public through this venue. So thank you, Richard, for asking the chief to be here. Any
Thank you,
questions or comments for the chief? Thank you, Chief. Chief? Councilman Kell? More steps.
Do you believe we need more officers to increase the force to be able to take care of some of this issue? Because I know myself, I personally made a phone call to 911 a week or two ago about a very aggressive homeless man standing over and berating a homeless woman and almost doing him, and it just got put it as a disturbance, even though I said this man is likely to cause some harm, he's stepping off in traffic and things like that. And 45 minutes later, we did not, I still didn't have a response. I stood there and watched just in case I had to intervene. But do you think we need more officers right now to combat this issue?
Yes. I mean, I certainly would take all of the vacancies that we currently have.
I mean, past our vacancies. And I just think it's becoming I'll get into later with my comments, but our crime rate is getting way out of hand, I believe. So I think we need to really push this really hard from the law enforcement side of things.
We work very diligently on recruiting. We're very, very innovative in terms of that. But certainly we have some challenges at the staffing level, but the men and women are working very hard on the streets on both the violent crime issues and the unsheltered and all of the other taskings that the police department is around. We're here to protect and serve. So I was happy that we just did an update on a recent shooting arrest. So we're continuing to work, and that's what the public can expect for us. We'll be here working.
Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor. Quick question, Chief. You may not be able to answer this, but I pulled the property up on the county map here, and it's an odd little parcel that apparently is owned by the city. Appears to be a tributary to the Chunga there. I noticed across the street to the east is a really large parcel owned by Shawnee County. So is there an attempt to move folks off of park property onto other property? Was that part of the issue? And if you don't feel comfortable answering that, or that's fine.
In fairness, I think that there's always two sides to every story, but the park police dialogues that we've had, they characterized their discussion as simply educating them that they could not camp in the park, that there wasn't any additional direction. I wasn't there. I don't know the conversation. So I can tell you that we're looking at, and I'm about to learn a great deal about creek, I don't even know the right word, creek, the areas around creeks and how that pertains to waterways. And so we will continue to be innovative and creative and use all of the staff knowledge that we have that far exceeds my own in regards to creek structures and et cetera. But I wrote that down. I saw Amanda writing down the ordinance as far as, trimming of trees without authorization. So we will continue to use all the ordinances that we have currently. And when you folks or the policymakers make changes, then we'll enforce those. And that's what we do, and that's what you do.
So if it's not legal to camp in a park, is that correct? I'm guessing we could transfer that little piece of property to Shawnee County Parks and Rec in probably less than a week.
I have every confidence in the innovative and creative nature of the policymakers that sit on the city council to give me assistance in any way they deem necessary.
Yes, I believe we're looking at it, and there's some weird stuff in it.
Yeah, every situation is very detail specific, and we always look at, as a standard practice, we always look at ordinances that currently exist for enforcement options.
I do appreciate it, and as was said earlier, it's a tough job, it's a tough issue. Nobody has the answers, but we're doing the best we can, and I know you guys are too. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Richard?
Thank you, Chief. I want to compliment our city employees. You don't get an audit as perfect as what you got tonight without every employee being a part of that. And that I have, I've been some places where the audits weren't so good. And it is an embarrassment to the governing body. It's an embarrassment to the city manager, but you have nothing to be embarrassed here. But that's because all your city employees are working together with a lot of moving parts and help do that. I appreciate our police department and our fire department. Every day they are online. And when you talk especially about the homeless situation, our fire department gets involved in that also. And they have a lot to do out there to protect public safety. And sometimes they have to deal with issues that they weren't planning on dealing with. But I appreciate what they do out there every day of the year for us. Thank you for, I enjoy being acting city manager of Topeka. It is a vibrant community. It is a community that is moving ahead. And what I can tell the public and what I can tell you is that the discussions you have here are no different than what any other city is having. And I believe Councilman Duncan can also reaffirm that from the discussions he has with other cities over at the league. Now, this is going to make Councilman Dobler and Braxton cringe, but it's relatively easy to build a street, okay? That's a city manager's kind of spin on it. You have to do the engineering and you have to get the land, but you build that street. We agree upon it, we build it. Homeless issues aren't that easy to solve because it's an emotional issue. It's an issue that affects our neighborhoods, and but it's something that we have to work on, and we have to work with our partners, and we have to, I believe, also involve the neighborhoods in that discussion. So thank you for the hard work you do every Tuesday, every day as you serve in your positions representing this city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You brought up one thing, and I think I would be remiss when you said, talked about the firefighters and what they do out there. I want to thank the firefighter that's with us tonight for responding to the need we had earlier this evening. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Councilman Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. I guess I'll weigh in very briefly on our extension of our homeless discussion. I mentioned it last week that I think it's probably time to start having some conversation about camping ordinances. It's been discussed, thought in the universe for a while now. I think the closer we can move to some sort of discussion in the coming months would be beneficial. I do appreciate we've increased some enforcement of certain areas and existing laws. I think that certainly there's no easy solutions regardless of your situation. I think enforcing those sets at least a standard for Topeka to let folks know, some of those laws still need to be passed. And obviously, I think as we look into the budget, making sure the other end of that is that we are continuing to fund the many programs I think a lot of folks don't even know exist that support transitional housing and mental health crises and addiction issues, and our police department that has people specialized to that. So we got to make sure we keep funding those programs and putting resources behind them. I will give an update. I got an email today from Councilwoman Hiller on it, and Jump has come the last couple of weeks on our trust fund and land bank. You should hopefully, by our end of our meeting last month, get some recommendations for individuals to serve on the Board of Trustees for the Land Bank so that they can then start meeting the rest of this year, putting the pieces together and starting that program next year. So that is moving forward. The trust fund, obviously the money is there. That ordinance was passed 5-ish years ago. And so as Rhiannon has started to look at it to put it into effect, she realized that sometimes things change and a lot of them are very, silly is not the right word, but some of our departments have new names, right? So things like that to clarify. So there will probably be some sort of cleanup ordinance coming that will be literally that, just getting us, now that we're ready to do it, putting that cleanup language into effect so that it can actually be used by planning and others so we can start acting that trust fund. So that's where we're at on those two things, and hopefully that'll come next month or, yeah. Last two things are, not tomorrow, but next Wednesday. You can show up tomorrow, but my next office hours are the 28th, the following Wednesday. Show up next Wednesday. No, we'll be there. Buy something at Fairlawn Plaza. Good for you. But you can always call me, but those are my next office hours, 4:30 on Wednesday the 28th at Fairlawn Plaza. And, of course, we don't have a meeting between now and the 4th of July. So everybody be safe, have fun, be responsible, be aware of your neighbors and their property. Don't get too crazy, but enjoy the holiday, everybody. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hofer. Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I too wanted to give a shout out to the staff. And I'll do it one more time, but more briefly maybe than the others. Just appreciate all the effort, all the stress and strain. I mean, innovation's awesome, but it's also like, whew, okay, where are we and where are we going from here? And so from us at the council level, or from me anyway, I appreciate that stress and strain. Hopefully we can pull it all together and move forward to the objectives that we have. We've had a lot of talk about the homeless issues tonight. Something that didn't get reported to us exactly was that apparently early on in after the first homeless summit, some straw polls were taken in that day to focus on that low barrier shelter. Perhaps with that as the focus, all the other issues will be discussed, but what I'm hearing today and what we're hearing from folks here is that, you know, that broad range of what our ordinances are and how we work with those, all the other immediate homeless issues, but also making sure that the longer term housing opportunities are available for folks to move from that homeless circumstance into and stay. I didn't see that on the list, and so I know that Kristen's working with the group, and there may be some refocus in order to make sure that they're looking at the breadth of the issues. And again, credit to staff. Our person that's helping is not a consultant, but is just a convener for that process, and my understanding is that the various staff and community partners that are part of that initiative are the ones who are being detailed to go out and do that research and bring it back to the group, which is a really amazing process that apparently has worked well in other places. And so hats off to all of them for that work. Last but not least, on a little lighter note, I haven't promoted it yet, but Topeka United is doing its 3rd annual Kaw River Float on Sunday. The weather forecast looks good, and if anybody would like to go, and is free on Sunday, we might still have a couple of spots. So you're welcome to join. That's it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. Early this morning, the KSNT article was flooding District 2 social media platforms. You know, any chagrin that was seen on my face was like, you know, folks, glad you came up for public comment. God bless you. Hope y'all get it figured out. But it's really interesting to me the way that some things have to come right to your front door before you notice them. I've seen, I don't know how many older women cry with how things have changed in the community in District 2 because of the unsheltered, of the encampments, of the defecation in parks that we've talked about has happened, when people are having picnics, the way things have consistently gotten worse over the past several years. We've all heard me say it over and over and over again. So now we have a consultant here. We have it stacked with Topeka Rescue Mission people, and we have yet to hear Topeka Rescue Mission have any olive branch or any willingness to talk within District 2. So with that said, North Topeka businesses and residents on both sides of the bridge are requesting a meeting with Topeka Rescue Mission, and I've sent out the invitation. I meet with businesses tomorrow that have had it up to here with it. Got another call today of an encampment in North Topeka in nice houses, because District 2 may have some poor folks in it, but we still care about our houses. We still care about our yards, right? So we had another call, went out there, saw one small encampment, one huge encampment, huge, along the Shunga in North Topeka. Trash all over. I couldn't count the number of tents that were in there. And this small circle of people that live in nice houses, not rich houses, but nice houses, have been dealing with this by themselves for years. And so finally somebody said, contact Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala. So went out there, saw everything. Media was out there. They're going to do a report on it tomorrow. And so here we are, right? So, changing the pattern of what a neighborhood looked like, being able to drink your coffee out on a tree-lined area, all of that is ruined at this point for people in District 2 that live along the call. People may not want to hear this, but my families have lived there for 120 years. Valdivia's and Ramirez's have lived there for 120 years. My uncles used to fish along the Kansas River, right? So this is what we're looking at. So we in District 2 are going to have a public meeting about it. If anybody else wants to come down from around the city, that's fine too. But it is going to happen. This isn't to put it all in the mission. It's not. But when you are not transparent in a community that you say that you are a part of, and in a district that continues to bleed out, then people are going to want to know what's up. And District 2 wants to know what's up, especially after that whole thing happened with this flood of calls and emails I got about them being given this new church. And then a few hours later, after everything just blew up, we get a press release saying, no, it's not going to be used for a low barrier shelter. There's so much happening behind the scenes, and it's unfortunate that it can't be brought forward. I'm not saying the city, I'm saying that we can't find a way to bring it forward. And I'm just going to say again, I understand that District 2 citizens have no right to tell the mission what they do or do not do on their premises. So I figured there's some little plan going on where, they're going to do something there. And we'll continue to fight it, whatever it takes, in a peaceful manner. So that's all. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to say hi to Rita. That's first. Second, I want to congratulate Amanda. If they knew Amanda, they would have gave her a bourbon glass and not a tequila sunrise glass. Third, I want to say, I really like the acting interim city manager guy. Richard, I met with him and he gave kudos to the firefighters. That's right up my alley right there. So he's going to be all right. I want to thank all the residents that came to speak before the city council tonight. They called me all weekend and they wanted to come up and share, and I asked them just to be respectful, and they were, and I thank them for that. I do have some questions for Amanda, only for the public. because we've already discussed Quinton Heights Steel, NIA, their topic will be on the homeless camp that they've been fighting for years. And they just cleaned up a big camp, and so when they cleaned up that camp, it just pushed them further along or brought more people in or whatever it did. So I just want you to answer these questions for me, if you would, Amanda. It's my understanding that homeless camp is on city property, where the two individuals were at. Is that correct?
Are you talking about a homeless encampment that was just cleaned up?
Yes. No, I'm talking about 23rd and Valley Park.
Yes, it is on city property.
Okay, and I'm only saying this because there's a lot, you know how a lot of people start talking and it's just, you know. Next is, they were told that they cannot camp in a flood zone. Is that, can you give me, the information on that?
There is no prohibition about camping in the flood zone in the city of Topeka. It is not in our ordinance.
Okay. So that information that's out there that they can't camp in a flood zone is not correct?
Yes, that would be incorrect.
Okay, because they're thinking that, you know, since they got moved a little because they're in a flood zone, then they should be able to, move them out since it's all in the flood zone. And I think that's what Mr. Todd had shared with everybody, or that's where we got that little. So I just wanted to clarify those things, because neighbors are talking, and I think it's really good to make sure that everybody understands. I will say, on the second Monday at 6 o'clock at Grace Cathedral, or not Cathedral, Grace Methodist at 27th and Fillmore, Amanda will come and answer any questions and also talk from a legal point of what we can and cannot do. And to the city manager, I would like to know, are we not going to hear from the consultants? And I don't even know if you know this, but if you can find out if we're going to hear from the consultant, or is it going to take her report, going to take 6 months, and then we'll hear from her. I would like to know that. To Spencer, I think we've talked about the ordinance. I'm ready to put my name on it, and I think there's some things that we can do now. So I'll be willing to do that. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. Will we receive the budget for next year? Usually we get it 4th of July weekend. Will we receive a copy of that? Yes or no? And you can get back to me with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo what Ms. Ortiz said there about Mr. Neinstead. I really appreciate everything you've done. It's amazing how quickly you've been able to come in here and not just be here, but actually make a difference. So I really appreciate everything you've done for us so far, and I'm sure your wife wouldn't mind another 6 or 7 months of this.
Let's try.
Uh-oh, you're on the clock.
47. You know, 46 years of marriage is pretty good. So, no. And just on a personal note, my son Andrew heads off for Air Force basic training this week, so good luck to him. And I told him he'll be hating it after the first day, but all he's got to do is survive. So, thanks.
Councilman Kell.
We need to start helping our fire and our police department coming up here soon. We have 4th of July coming up. Please obey the dates and times of discharge of fireworks. Always have adult supervision. Keep the discharge of fireworks away from homes and other structures, and have water ready. Unfortunately, today we tied the homicide record of last year, and we're on pace to break the record of 30 set in 2017. I've said this several times. If you see something, say something. Could be something with domestic violence, mental health issues, someone out of control when they're under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or someone that states they're going to be violent towards someone else. Speak up, help prevent these homicides from happening. If you have any information on an active investigation, please contact law enforcement. If you let someone get away with a violent act, they're going to just do it again and again, and eventually it may affect you directly. So if you know something, please say something. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilwoman Nager, are you still online? There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been having some eye issues, so I've taken myself off of camera at different times. I just wanted to go ahead and shed light on the fact that yesterday was Juneteenth, for those who don't know and can bear a short explanation from a white lady. It is the celebration of the emancipation of enslaved peoples in the United States. And an important thing to remember is that the Emancipation Proclamation was issued on January 1st, 1863. And these people of color did not find out until June 19th, 1865, 2.5 years later. If that is not emblematic of how slow the wheels of social justice can sometimes move, and then many times move, I don't know what it is. What is? So please take this as a reminder that we need to all push forward to make sure that we are all treated as human beings, that we are all treated with dignity, that we fight for each other's rights, and we are a better community for it. Another thing today is that it is national, there's also a fly in here too, I'm falling apart. But it is World Refugee Day. It is estimated that 100 million people were forcibly displaced from their homes and communities by the end of 2022, 1 year, according to the World Health Organization. According to the UN, every minute, 20 people leave everything behind to escape war, persecution, or terror. Every minute. So if there is an opportunity that to go ahead and help refugees, whether they're from Syria, Ukraine, those are just the two places I can think of off the top of my head, but people are coming from around the world seeking here for refuge. Central America, Africa. So there is a local organization, Top City Promise, and they are providing humanitarian aid to refugees in Topeka. And their website is topcitypromise.org. Now, most of the stuff on there is about specifically Ukrainian refugees. I wasn't finding other local programs very readily. And so if you know of any programs, please feel free to go ahead and share them so we can go ahead and get the word out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of quick things. First of all, I want to single out the finance department, particularly Freddie and Adam. They were both front and center tonight on both the strategic plan and the budget. And I know sometimes we make comments and statements, and sometimes it can come across as a little bit pointed and directed towards them. Certainly not the case. They do a great job. And as you think about the big things that we've addressed in really the last 6 months, utility rates, CIP that we just finished last week, strategic plan was certainly part of that, and now we're headed into the budget, which consumes those folks and others for several months. Just want to say good work, and we couldn't do it without you. We get to sit up here and make comments and occasionally get a laugh or two, but you guys are doing all the hard work, so we appreciate that. Want to say to Rita Ninestead, we certainly appreciate you letting us have your husband for this period of time. We're going to stretch it as far as we possibly can, but we recognize that you want him back soon, so thank you very much. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. I'll follow up a little bit too on our acknowledgement of what we've asked Richard to do when he thought he was going to be retiring. I think it's important for us to recognize Rita as well, because she could have said no. I know from experience you have to check things out with your family to make sure you make that big decision, because that decision affects more than just you. I think Richard has brought a nice tone to our discussions. I appreciate some of the comments you've made prior to some of our discussion. So thank you for that. I think that reveals your years of experience, and that comes with real experience in doing the job. So thank you for that, Richard. I appreciate it. If you missed the pinning ceremony earlier, he's now in the club. So we got him taken care of on that. I want to thank Councilman Duncan and Councilwoman Ortiz, who joined me out at the Juneteenth celebration this last weekend. It was a good group. We had a good crowd. It was important for us to recognize that 10-year anniversary from something that I think we've all been familiar with over the years and seen it grow to what it is now. It really is something the community is proud of. So thank you for joining me there. I did accomplish my mission. I think Councilwoman Ortiz knows that. I found that same woman who makes the best fried catfish sandwiches you can find in this town. And she was there, took care of me, and it is a fun opportunity. So if you didn't get your chance this year, please put it on your calendar next year. And if somebody asks me, when is it? Oh, no, they weren't paying attention. So again, thank you for all the discussions that we've had this evening. We do have a need for an executive session. Our meeting has gone a little long, and I think our executive session is for 45 minutes. So we're going to also have to extend our 10 o'clock time as well.
Yes, I'm finally getting the hang of that. So the motion would be to waive the rules and extend past 10 p.m. and to recess into executive session not to exceed 45 minutes for consultation with the city attorney to discuss attorney-client privilege matters regarding a specific employment matter as justified by KSA 754319B2. The open meeting will resume in city council chambers. The following staff are requested to assist the governing body in its deliberations. City Attorney Stanley.
Okay, we've heard the need for an executive session. Here's the motion from Deputy Mayor to an executive session. A second from Councilman Kell. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There she is. Thank you, Councilwoman Ortiz. We will adjourn for executive session. I show 9:36. Give us a 10-minute break before we go into discussion. Okay, we're coming out of our executive session. No action has been taken. No further business come before this body. The meeting is adjourned.